Welcome to Monk's Temple. Tonight, you'll discover a powerful secret. A secret that Buddhist monks have protected and practiced for centuries. A secret to quieting the restless mind, to finding deep, meaningful rest when the world feels too loud. Over the next 3 hours, I'm going to share with you 10 remarkable Zen stories. Not just any stories. These are the same tales that have helped millions of people, just like you, finally silence the racing thoughts, let go of the day's weight, and drift into the most peaceful, restorative sleep of their lives. Each story is a container. And inside each one, there is a hidden key. A key that unlocks your mind's natural, inherent ability to let go of stress, worry, and anxiety. To simply be at peace. Now, here's what makes this different from any ordinary sleep meditation or relaxation technique you might have tried before. These ancient teachings, they work even if you've never meditated a day in your life. Even if your mind feels like a storm that won't stop raging. Even if you've tried everything else and nothing seems to stick. The Buddha himself once said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." In our time together tonight, you'll discover exactly what this means. And more importantly, how to apply this timeless wisdom to your own life, right here, right now. As we journey together through these tales, stories of empty boats, wise monks, unexpected challenges, and profound wisdom, you'll notice something amazing beginning to happen. Almost without effort. Your physical tension will begin to dissolve. The tightness in your shoulders, your jaw, your back, it will soften. Your thoughts, those relentless thoughts, will start to slow their frantic pace. And you'll find yourself, naturally, gently, sinking into a state of profound, deep relaxation. A state where healing happens. Where rest becomes truly restorative. So, wherever you are, make yourself comfortable. Truly comfortable. Adjust your pillow. Let your blanket settle around you. Allow your body to become heavy against the bed, supported completely. There is nothing you need to do. Nowhere you need to go. Just be here. Take one deep, slow breath with me now. In through your nose, filling your lungs completely, and then a long, slow exhale through your mouth, releasing everything you've been holding onto. And as you exhale, know this. You have just taken the first, most important step on a journey. A journey of peace. A journey that's been waiting for you, since the beginning of time. Let's begin. Our first story takes us to the banks of a slow-moving, peaceful river, where a simple yet life-changing lesson about the nature of our reactions awaits us. This is the story of the empty boat, ***. There once was a man who loved nothing more than to row his small wooden boat on a wide, peaceful river. For him, this was the greatest joy. To drift along the calm water, the oars dipping softly, to be surrounded by nothing but nature and solitude. Every single evening, as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple and gold, he would push his boat from the shore and embark on this quiet, personal journey. On one such evening, everything was perfect. The air was still. The water was like glass, reflecting the fiery sunset. He paddled softly, his heart full, relishing the profound tranquility. It was in this perfect moment that he noticed something. Another boat. It was heading directly toward him from further down the river. At first, he wasn't concerned. He called out politely, his voice carrying over the water. "Be careful there. You're on a collision course." But the other boat didn't change direction. It didn't slow. It continued drifting, coming closer and closer. A flicker of irritation sparked in his chest. His peaceful evening was being interrupted. He raised his voice, more firmly this time. "Hey! Move aside. You're going to crash into me." Still, the boat came on. No response. No change. Now, the irritation bloomed into full anger. This careless boater was ruining everything. His peaceful mood shattered, replaced by boiling frustration and mounting anxiety as he watched the inevitable approach. He began shouting, his voice echoing, full of rage. "What is wrong with you? Turn. Pay attention." Finally, with a dull thud, the two boats collided. The impact rocked his small vessel. And in that moment, all his pent-up anger was ready to explode. He was prepared to unleash a torrent of fury on this utterly careless, disrespectful person. He steadied himself and looked fiercely into the other boat, only to find it was completely empty. No one was inside. No careless boater. No rude stranger. It was simply an abandoned boat, untethered, drifting wherever the current took it. In that instant, the man's anger dissolved. It vanished as if it had never been there at all. He just sat there, in his own boat, feeling foolish. And then, curious. He had been shouting, screaming, his heart pounding, at an empty boat. Nothing had changed about the situation itself. The boats had still collided. The impact had still happened. What changed was his understanding. There was no intention behind it. No carelessness. No disrespect. No malicious other to direct his anger toward. The Buddha once shared this profound truth: you will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. This truth reveals itself perfectly, beautifully, in the story of the empty boat. Our anger, our frustration, our resentment, so often, these powerful, draining emotions arise not from the events themselves, but from the stories we create about those events. The narratives we spin about the intentions, the carelessness, the malice of others. Why do we do this? Why do we react this way? In Zen Buddhism, this reactivity, this quickness to anger, stems from a deep-seated clinging of our ego. Our attachment to a separate, fragile sense of self that feels it must constantly be defended, validated, and protected. When someone cuts us off in traffic, our ego experiences it as a personal affront. How dare they disrespect me? The ego constructs a narrative where we are the eternal center of the universe, and everyone else is either an ally or an adversary. Think about your own day. Just today. How many empty boats did you encounter? Situations where you automatically, instantly, attributed harmful intent where none likely existed. The driver who merged suddenly, maybe they're rushing to a hospital. The coworker who didn't reply to your greeting, maybe they're preoccupied with a silent, personal crisis. The friend who hasn't returned your message, maybe they're struggling with a wave of depression they can't yet put into words. Yet, our ego mind. It's so quick. So efficient. It fills these empty vessels with assumptions. With stories of malice, of carelessness, of personal disrespect. In Zen practice, we cultivate an awareness of this pattern through mindfulness. It's not about stopping the thoughts. It's about observing them. By watching our thoughts arise without immediately identifying with them, without becoming them, we can catch ourselves in the very act of filling empty boats. We can notice the physical sensations that signal this process, the tightening in the chest, the quickening of the breath, the heat in the face, the narrowing of vision. We can use these sensations as bells of mindfulness. Gentle reminders to pause, and to investigate. Is this boat truly occupied? Or is it empty? The great 13th century Zen master, Dogen, taught that, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. When we forget the self, when we loosen our grip on our ego's constant, exhausting need to assert and defend its position, we begin to see empty boats for what they truly are. Simply events. Occurrences in the vast, flowing river of existence. They carry no personal meaning. No intentional slight. The Buddha also taught, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Every single time we react with anger, we are the first to suffer. We are the ones who feel the burn. The other person, the situation, they may be completely unaffected. By recognizing the empty boats in our daily interactions, we liberate ourselves from this self-inflicted suffering. We drop the hot coal. Tonight, as you rest here, reflect gently on your day. Can you recall a moment when you felt slighted? Offended? Irritated? Now, look closer. Can you recognize the empty boat in that situation? Can you see how your own beautiful, protective, but sometimes mistaken mind, filled that empty vessel with assumptions, with judgments, with a story? And in that recognition, can you feel it? The freedom. The lightness that comes from letting that story go. As the Buddha said, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. The tranquility we search for so desperately, it is already available to us. Right here. Right now. It becomes available the moment we stop filling empty boats with the stories created by our ego mind. The moment we see the emptiness, and simply let the boats drift by. Now, let our journey take us from the calm river to a steep, rugged mountain path, where a monk faces a sudden, heart-stopping challenge. This is the story of the monk, and the tiger, ***. Once, in a time long ago, there was a quiet mountain monastery nestled so deep in an ancient forest that few knew of its existence. There lived a monk known for his profound wisdom and unshakable peace. His daily practice included long, solitary walks through the surrounding woods, where he would meditate on the teachings of the Buddha while immersed in the breathtaking beauty of nature. In this solitude, he connected deeply with the present moment, with the whispering trees, the chattering streams, the very soul of the world around him. One day, during his walk along a particularly narrow, winding mountain path, the monk suddenly heard a sound that froze his blood. A loud, guttural, frightening roar echoed through the trees, shaking the very leaves. A tiger's roar. He froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. When he turned, his worst fear materialized. Through the thick underbrush, a large, fierce tiger was charging toward him. Its powerful muscles coiled and released, its eyes locked on him with predatory focus. It moved with terrifying, breathtaking speed. The monk's body reacted before his mind could think. Instinct took over. Run. And he did. He sprinted down the narrow path, his simple robes billowing behind him like frantic wings. The thunder of the tiger's pursuit grew closer and closer. He could almost feel its hot breath on his neck. Desperate, his eyes scanned for escape. And then he saw it, a thick, sturdy vine hanging down the side of a sheer cliff. Without a moment's hesitation, he grabbed the vine and began to climb down, away from the path, hoping against hope to find safety on the cliff face or in some hidden ledge below. But as he descended, clinging to the vine for dear life, he made the mistake of looking down. And his heart sank into a pit of despair. Below him, at the very bottom of the cliff, another tiger had emerged. It was pacing back and forth, looking up at him, waiting patiently for him to fall. He was trapped. Utterly and completely. No way up. The first tiger waited above. No way down. The second tiger waited below. The monk paused, dangling from the vine, suspended between two certain deaths. His situation appeared hopeless. His mind raced, searching for a solution that did not exist. But then, as he hung there in this impossible space, something caught his eye. Growing right out of the cliffside, from a crack in the rock, just within arm's reach, was a small, wild strawberry plant. And on that plant, was a single, perfect, ripened red strawberry. It glowed like a jewel against the gray stone. In that impossible moment, the monk stopped. He stopped thinking about the tigers. He stopped thinking about his fear, his impending doom, his hopeless predicament. All of that fell away. Instead, with a calm he did not know he possessed, he reached out with one hand. Carefully, gently, he plucked the ripe strawberry. And he put it into his mouth. He bit into the fruit. And he savored it. The taste was exquisite. Sweet, yet tart. Fragrant. Perfect. For that brief, eternal moment, all that existed in his entire universe was the sublime, joyous flavor of that strawberry. The sweetness on his tongue. The miracle of its existence. Despite the mortal danger surrounding him, above and below, the monk found a profound, unshakable peace in that single, mindful moment. He had accepted, fully, that he could not change his immediate circumstances. But he could still choose, to fully experience the present that was being offered to him. The monk smiled, a genuine smile of understanding. Knowing that this fleeting taste of sweetness, this simple sensory joy, was a powerful reminder. A reminder of life's undeniable beauty, even in the most precarious, the most frightening of situations. The Buddha taught, do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. This teaching, so simple to hear, so challenging to live, lies beating at the very heart of the monk and tiger story. It reveals a profound, liberating truth about our shared human condition. We spend so much of our lives, suspended between two tigers. The tigers of our past, the regrets, the old wounds, the replaying of mistakes, the nostalgia for what cannot be changed. And the tigers of our future. The anxieties, the fears, the planning, the worrying about what has not yet happened, and may never happen. Why? Why do we struggle so mightily with the simple act of staying present? Zen Buddhism offers an explanation. Our minds evolved, magnificently, as survival mechanisms. They are constantly scanning, assessing, planning for threats, securing advantages. This evolutionary gift, however, becomes a spiritual liability when it perpetually pulls us away from the only moment we ever truly have, the only moment we can ever actually live, this one. Right now. Our thinking mind whispers, then shouts, convincing us that happiness, that peace, lies just around the corner. It lies in resolving past hurts, in securing future comforts. When, in reality, peace is only ever available in the present. It is the only place it can ever be found. Look deeply at your own experience. Just for a moment. How much of your mental suffering, your sleeplessness, your tension, comes from replaying past events you cannot change? The harsh words you wish you could take back. The opportunity that slipped through your fingers. The relationship that ended in a fog of pain. These are the tigers above you. And how much of your anxiety, your restlessness, stems from anticipating future scenarios that may never, ever materialize. The work presentation next week. The uncertain medical test results. The financial worries that loom on the horizon. These are the tigers below you. Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, a beacon of modern mindfulness, taught, the present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it. This is the strawberry in our story. The simple, available joy that exists alongside our difficulties. It does not deny the reality of our challenges. It doesn't pretend the tigers aren't there. It simply offers us a different relationship to them. A choice of where to place our attention. This strawberry, it might be the gentle warmth of sunlight on your skin through a window. The sound of rain against the roof. The comforting weight of a blanket. The taste of cool water. The miraculous, effortless rhythm of your own breath, moving in and out. These small, ever-present pleasures are always available. Even in our most difficult moments. But we miss them. We overlook them completely, when we are consumed by the roaring tigers of past and future. Zen practice teaches us to cultivate what the Japanese call ichigo-ichi. One time, one meeting. The recognition that each moment, each breath, each encounter, is a unique, precious, and unrepeatable gift. When we begin to truly understand the priceless nature of this moment, we naturally, gently, want to be fully present for it. Regardless of our circumstances. The Buddha said, "The secret of health for both mind and body is not to mourn for the past, worry about the future, or anticipate troubles, but to live in the present moment wisely and earnestly." This wisdom is an invitation. An invitation to notice, with kindness, where your attention habitually goes. Are you constantly rehearsing past conversations? Or pre-living future troubles? Can you, right now, gently guide your awareness back to the strawberry of this present moment? To the simple sensory experiences available to you, right here, as you listen. Tonight, as thoughts of tomorrow's responsibilities or yesterday's regrets begin to arise in the quiet, remember the monk. Remember the strawberry. What small joy, what simple sensory gift, might you savor right now, even amid any uncertainty you feel? Perhaps it's the rhythm of your breathing. The feeling of your body supported by the bed. The quiet darkness behind your eyelids. The simple safety of this moment. The Buddha taught, there is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. By learning to savor the strawberries along our journey, the small, present moment joys, we discover something revolutionary. We discover that peace is not waiting for us in some distant future when the tigers finally disappear. It is available right now. In their very presence. Our next story, shared by the Buddha himself, reveals a profound truth about the very architecture of our suffering through a simple, yet devastatingly powerful metaphor. This is the story of the two arrows, asterisk asterisk. One day, the Buddha was sitting with a gathering of his disciples in a peaceful forest clearing. The air was sweet with the scent of pine and earth. Tall trees swayed gently in a soft breeze, and the sound of birdsong filled the spaces between their teaching. The Buddha often used such serene settings to impart his deepest understandings about the nature of suffering and the path to liberation, to enlightenment. On this particular day, a young disciple, his face etched with the strain of deep thought, approached the Buddha. He bowed respectfully, but the confusion in his eyes was plain to see. "Master," the disciple began, his voice tentative. "I have tried to understand, but I confess, I do not. Why do we suffer so much in this life? Pain, hardship, loss, it seems to follow us wherever we go, like a shadow. Why is this so? And more importantly, how can we ever find true peace amidst so much inevitable suffering?" The Buddha gazed at the disciple with immense kindness and understanding. He saw not just the philosophical question, but the personal frustration, the ache behind it. He knew this was a question that lived in the hearts of all his followers. "Let me explain," the Buddha said, his voice as gentle as the forest breeze. "I would like you to imagine something. Imagine that a person is walking through the woods, like these, and is suddenly struck by an arrow. This arrow, it causes sharp, immediate pain. This pain is inevitable. It is a fact of being alive in this world. This is the first arrow." The disciples around him nodded slowly. They understood. The first arrow symbolized the unavoidable difficulties of life. The physical pain of illness or injury, the emotional ache of loss, the natural disappointments that come with being human. But now, the Buddha continued, his eyes holding the troubled disciple, imagine this. After being struck by the first arrow, the person is then struck by a second arrow. This second arrow does not come from outside. It is not shot by another archer. It is created. Created by the person's own mind. It is the anger that floods in after the pain. It is the fear, why does this always happen to me? It is the frustration, the sorrow, the resentment, the story of, this shouldn't be happening. This is the second arrow. The Buddha paused, allowing the profound simplicity of his words to sink into the silence of the clearing. You see, he said softly, while the first arrow is often unavoidable, a part of the natural course of life, the second arrow is optional. The first arrow represents the initial pain we all experience. But the second arrow, the profound suffering caused by how we react to that initial pain, that is something we can learn to avoid. The disciple listened, his confusion beginning to melt into a dawning comprehension. The Buddha explained that when we experience pain, physical or emotional, the first arrow, we so often, so automatically, make it infinitely worse by adding a second, third, fourth layer of suffering with our mental and emotional reactions. We don't just feel the pain. We rage against it. We become terrified of it returning. We feel victimized by it. We tell ourselves stories that deepen the wound. Instead of simply allowing and acknowledging the pain, we resist it with all our might. And in that resistance, we increase our suffering tenfold, 100-fold. When we are struck by the first arrow, the Buddha continued, we must learn to recognize it for exactly what it is, a natural, though painful, part of life. But we must also learn, with great care, to recognize the second arrow. That is the arrow we fashion for ourselves. Through mindful awareness and deep understanding, we can learn to choose. To choose not to let that second arrow pierce us. Master, the disciple asked, the light of understanding growing in his eyes, how? How can we avoid the second arrow? How can we prevent our own minds from becoming the source of our greatest suffering? The Buddha smiled, a smile that held the warmth of the sun breaking through the forest canopy. By practicing mindfulness, he said. By cultivating a gentle, observant awareness, we can learn to observe our thoughts and emotions as they arise, without immediately becoming attached to them, without believing them to be the absolute truth. When we feel pain, we can learn to acknowledge it. To say, there is pain. Without judgment. Without the story. We can accept that pain, in its various forms, is part of the tapestry of life. But we do not need to dwell in it, to marinate in it, or to create more suffering through our resistance and our negative, proliferating thoughts. In this way, we can learn to stop the second arrow, before it is ever loosed from the bow. The Buddha's teaching here is crystalline in its clarity, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. This simple, yet staggeringly profound statement captures the very essence of the two arrows parable. We cannot avoid all pain in life. The first arrows will find us. Illness, aging, disappointment, loss, they are part of the human contract. But, We have tremendous, untapped power over how much we suffer because of that pain. The space between the first arrow and our reaction to it, that space is where our freedom lies. Why do we so readily, so habitually, shoot second arrows at ourselves? Zen Buddhism points to several deeply ingrained aspects of our conditioned mind that create this automatic, painful pattern. First is our deeply ingrained habit of aversion. The mind's automatic, visceral recoiling from anything unpleasant. When pain arises, whether physical or emotional, we instinctively tense against it, push it away, wish it were otherwise. This creates an immediate layer of mental tension, of conflict, that compounds the original discomfort. It's like clenching a muscle around a wound. Second is our powerful tendency toward identification. The way we completely merge with our experiences. We don't think, there is pain being experienced. We think, I am in pain. This subtle linguistic shift has profound implications. When we fully identify with the pain, it becomes all-consuming. It defines our entire reality, our entire sense of self. I am a sufferer. When we can observe it with even a little space, it becomes just one passing weather pattern in the vast sky of our awareness. Third is our habit of proliferation. The mind's relentless tendency to generate endless chains of thought about our experiences. A simple headache isn't just a headache. It becomes a cascade. What if this is something serious? What if it gets worse tonight? Why does this always happen to me? I won't be able to focus at work tomorrow. What if I can't sleep? Each one of these thoughts is another second arrow, piercing us again and again and again. We are attacked by our own archer. These mental habits operate largely unconsciously, on autopilot. Which is precisely why the Buddha emphasized mindfulness as the remedy, as the training. Through mindfulness practice, we develop the capacity, the muscle, to see these patterns as they arise. We learn to recognize, in real time, the crucial difference between the unavoidable first arrow of pain, and the entirely optional second arrows of our mental and emotional reactions. The Buddha said, what you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create. This teaching reveals the immense creative power, for good or for suffering, inherent in our thoughts. Each time we respond to pain with aversion, identification, and proliferation, we are actively creating suffering. We are building our own prison. And each time we meet pain with mindful awareness, with a gentle, curious acceptance, we create the conditions for healing, for understanding, for growth. We open the door to our own freedom. Consider, for a moment, a personal disappointment from your own life. Perhaps a rejection, a failure, a loss. The first arrow is the actual event and the natural, human emotional response it evokes, the sting, the sadness, the hurt. The second arrows? Those might include thoughts like, this always happens to me. Globalizing. I'll never succeed. Catastrophizing. I should have done better. Self-criticism. Or, this isn't fair. Resistance to reality. Each of these thoughts, each second arrow, creates additional, unnecessary suffering beyond the original, natural disappointment. The wise Zen teacher Charlotte Joko Beck put it simply, pain is not something to be avoided. It's something to be experienced, without resistance. This is the heart of working skillfully with the first arrow. We don't deny the pain. We don't pretend it doesn't hurt. That would be delusion. Instead, we bring a curious, compassionate attention to the experience itself. We feel the raw sensation, the raw emotion, without adding the second arrows of judgment, of resistance, of elaborate, painful storytelling. The Buddha taught, if you are facing in the right direction, all you need to do is keep walking. The right direction, counterintuitively, is often toward our pain, not away from it. By turning toward our difficult experiences with mindfulness, we develop the capacity to be with them skillfully. To hold them, without compounding them with a quiver full of second arrows. Tonight, as you rest, as you notice sensations arising in your body, perhaps a slight ache, a restlessness, or emotions arising in your mind, can you begin to discern the difference? Can you sense the first arrow of simple sensation? And then notice if your mind wants to fire a second arrow of complaint, of worry, of story? Can you experiment with meeting the inevitable, small pains of life, the physical discomfort, the emotional tenderness, the mental itch, with a kind awareness? With a simple, gentle acknowledgement? Rather than with immediate resistance? As the Buddha said, the way is not in the sky. The way is in the heart. The path to freedom from unnecessary suffering isn't found in escaping our human experience. It is found in the courage to meet it, with wisdom, with compassion, and without adding to our own burden. Now, let us explore a story that teaches us, with heartbreaking tenderness, about the universal nature of loss, and how understanding this universality can, paradoxically, bring a deep and abiding peace. This is the parable of the mustard seed ***. Once, long ago, in the time of the Buddha, there lived a young woman named Kisa Gautami. She was known throughout her village for her kindness, her gentle compassion, and her deep devotion to her family. Her life was simple, centered around the love for her only child, a beloved young son who was the very light of her world. But tragedy, as it does, arrived without warning. Her son fell desperately ill. Despite all her prayers and care, the illness took him. He passed away in her arms. Overcome with a grief so vast it blotted out the sun, Kisa Gautami would not, accept her son's death. The pain was too shattering. In a state of sheer, blind agony, she did something unimaginable to the villagers. She carried her son's lifeless body in her arms, and she began to wander. From house to house, through the winding lanes of the village, she went. At each door, she would beg, her voice broken, "Please, please help me. My son is dead. Is there anyone here, anyone at all, who can bring him back to life? Who has medicine for this?" But at every door, the response was the same. People looked at her with pity, with horror, with discomfort. They shook their heads, turning her away gently or not so gently. "There is nothing we can do," they said. "I am so sorry." With each rejection, her sorrow grew heavier. Her heart ached as if it were being physically torn. The world had become a cruel, meaningless place. One day, exhausted and hollow, her path crossed with that of a wise elder. This elder, seeing the depth of her derangement from grief, took pity on her. He did not offer false comfort. Instead, he offered a direction. Go to the Buddha, he told her. He is staying in the nearby Jetavana Grove. Perhaps he can help you. A flicker of something, not quite hope, but a desperate direction, entered Kisa's heart. She hurried to the Buddha, who was known throughout the lands for his boundless compassion and supreme wisdom. She found him sitting calmly under the shade of a great Bodhi tree, surrounded by a peaceful circle of his disciples. Without ceremony, she fell to her knees before him. She placed her son's small body on the ground in front of the enlightened one. And she pleaded, her voice raw with a mother's agony, Master, I beg you. Please. You have powers. Bring my child back to life. I cannot bear this pain. I cannot live with it. The Buddha looked at her. He saw not just a woman, but the raw, screaming face of grief itself. He felt immense compassion for her. But he also knew, with the clarity of his awakening, that she needed to discover a profound truth for herself. A truth that could not simply be told. It had to be lived. He thought for a moment in the heavy silence. I can help you, Kisa, he said, his voice soft as a whisper, yet carrying the weight of mountains. But first, you must bring me something. Anything, she cried, her heart leaping for the first time since her son's death. Go into the village, the Buddha instructed. Go from house to house. And bring me a mustard seed. A simple mustard seed. Kisa almost wept with relief. A mustard seed. Such a simple, common thing. Yes, Master. I will bring you a mustard seed immediately. She began to rise, ready to sprint back to the village. But the Buddha raised a hand, stopping her. There is one condition, Kisa, he added. The mustard seed, it must come from a household. A household that has never experienced death. Not once. If you can find such a household, bring me the seed from that home. And I will bring your child back to life. Kisa nodded, her mind fixed on this simple, impossible task. She set off with a determined energy she hadn't felt in days. She went to the first house in the village, a modest but clean home. She knocked. A kind-faced woman answered. Kisa, clutching her last shred of hope, explained her request. Please, can you spare a mustard seed? But, it must come from a home where no one, where death has never visited. The woman's face softened with a sadness so deep it seemed ancient. Oh, my dear woman, she said gently. I am so sorry. But my beloved husband, he passed away last year, after a long illness. This house knows death. Kisa thanked her, her hope dented but not broken. She moved to the next house. And the next. Again, she made her request. And again, the response was a variation of the same sad song. I am sorry, but my mother died many years ago. We lost a child to fever. My brother fell in the fields. My grandmother passed peacefully in her sleep. House after house. Door after door. All day long, as the sun journeyed across the sky, Kisa Garami knocked. And at every single threshold, she heard stories. Stories of loved ones lost. A mother, a father, a sister, a brother, a husband, a wife, a child. Each story was unique in its details, but identical in its core: loss. Grief. The enduring mark of death. As the day wore on, a slow, dawning realization began to push through the fog of her personal agony. It started as a whisper, then grew into a certainty. Death was not unique to her. It was not a special, cruel punishment visited only upon her house. It was a universal experience. A thread woven into the fabric of every single family, every single life, in the village. No one was spared. Finally, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in the colors of ending, Kisa returned to the Buddha. She was empty-handed. But her heart was no longer filled with the desperate, isolating hope that had driven her. It was filled with a new, heavy, but clear understanding. She knelt before him, not as a frantic supplicant, but as a woman who had seen a truth. "Master," she said, her voice quiet now, steady. "I could not find it. I could not find a single house that has never known death. Every family has experienced the loss of someone dear to them. A part of their heart lives elsewhere." She took a deep, shuddering breath. Now I understand. Death is a part of life. It comes to all. And no one can escape it. The Buddha nodded gently, his eyes full of compassion for her hard-won wisdom. "Kisa," he replied, "you have learned an important truth. Perhaps the most important. Death is inevitable. And the suffering that feels so personal, so unique, comes to all who are attached to the things of this world, to the people of this world. But by accepting the impermanent nature of all life, you can find peace. Your grief, it was not yours alone to bear. It is shared by all beings. This is the nature of existence." With these words, Kisa Gotami's understanding was complete. She had been blinded, consumed, by the sheer intensity of her personal grief. But now, she saw. She saw that all people, in all places, in all times, walk this same path of loss. This new understanding did not erase her love for her son. It did not trivialize her pain. But it allowed her to place her personal sorrow within the vast, shared current of human experience. It was no longer a solitary prison. It was a connection. This understanding allowed her, finally, to release her son's body. To bathe him, to prepare him, to bury him with the dignity and love he deserved. And in doing so, in accepting the natural order, she found a sense of peace. A peace that coexisted with her love. A peace that came not from forgetting, but from understanding her place in the great, flowing stream of life and death. The Buddha taught, everything that has a beginning has an ending. Make your peace with that and all will be well. This profound, unflinching teaching lies at the very heart of Kisa Gotami's journey. Her story illuminates one of the most challenging, yet ultimately liberating, truths of our existence: nothing lasts forever. And our desperate, exhausting attempts to deny this reality only serve to increase our suffering 1,000-fold. Why? Why do we resist the truth of impermanence so fiercely, with such terror? Zen Buddhism points directly to the root, our deep-seated craving for permanence. We want what is pleasant to remain pleasant forever. We want beauty to be eternal. We want our health, our youth, our capabilities to be constant. And most of all, we want those we love to remain with us, unchanged, always. This craving for permanence in a world that is fundamentally, beautifully, relentlessly impermanent creates a fundamental, grinding tension. And that tension manifests as suffering. Like Kisa, we often respond to loss first with denial. We refuse to accept what has happened. We expend enormous psychic energy trying to bargain, to reverse the irreversible, to pretend the ending isn't real. This denial is a natural, human part of the grieving process. But when we become stuck in it, we prevent ourselves from moving through the healing that waits on the other side. Notice the Buddha's supreme skill as a teacher. He didn't immediately lecture the grieving Kisa on the philosophy of impermanence. What good would abstract words be to a heart shattered in pieces? Instead, he gave her an experience. A task that forced her to engage with the world, to listen to the stories of others. He allowed her to discover this universal truth for herself. And a truth discovered is infinitely more powerful than a truth merely told. The Buddha said the root of suffering is attachment. In Kisa's case, her attachment to her son wasn't just love. Love can continue beyond form. It was a desperate, clinging identification that could not accommodate the reality of his death. Her impossible journey to find a mustard seed from a house untouched by death helped her recognize, in her bones, that attachment to permanence is a futile fight against the nature of reality itself. Every household, no matter how wealthy, happy, or blessed, had been visited by the great leveler. Death. This universal nature of loss, it connects us all. It creates what Buddhists might call the fellowship of suffering. When we truly understand, really understand, that loss touches everyone, the rich and the poor, the powerful and the weak, the wise and the foolish, our own grief, while still uniquely painful, becomes less isolating. We recognize our experience not as a unique, separating tragedy, but as part of the great, shared current of human existence. The 14th century Zen master Bosway wrote, "To see the truth, leave desire behind. If you do not give up desire, you will not see the truth." Kisa's desire, the burning, impossible desire to bring her son back, prevented her from seeing the truth of impermanence. Only when she abandoned this impossible desire, could she begin to accept reality. And in that acceptance, she found the beginning of peace. It's interesting to note what the Buddha did not do. He didn't try to console her with promises of an afterlife or a heavenly reunion. He guided her, instead, toward accepting the natural order of things. That what is born, will die. What comes together, will eventually separate. This acceptance is not resignation. It is not defeat. It is alignment with reality. And alignment with reality is the only place from which genuine healing can ever begin. The Buddha also taught, the trouble is, you think you have time. This pointed, piercing reminder of life's beautiful brevity is an invitation. An invitation to value each moment. To cherish each relationship. To be present with what and who is before us, knowing, with clear eyes, that nothing lasts forever. Rather than making us morbid or depressed, this clear-eyed awareness can infuse our lives with a greater appreciation, a deeper presence, a more tender love. Tonight, as you rest, you might reflect on losses you have experienced in your own life. The loss of a person. The end of a relationship. A change in career or health. The passing of a phase of life. Can you recognize the mustard seed lesson in your own journey? Can you see how your suffering may have been intensified, prolonged, by a resistance to the natural, inevitable flow of impermanence? And can you also see how your experience connects you to every other human heart that has ever loved and lost? The Buddha said, when you realize how perfect everything is, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky. This, perfect everything, includes the cycles. The cycles of life and death. Of growth and decay. Of coming together and separating. It is the very rhythm of existence itself. So tonight, remember Kisa Gotami's long walk. Can you find a strange comfort in the universality of impermanence? Can you see how accepting this truth, not with bitterness but with grace, might ease your own suffering? Not by diminishing your love or your loss, but by placing it within the vast, compassionate container of shared human experience. As the Buddha taught, in the end, only three things truly matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. Our next story speaks to a wisdom that seems almost superhuman. The wisdom of suspending judgment, of maintaining a deep equanimity in the face of life's constant, unpredictable changes. This is the story of the farmer, and the horse, ***. Once upon a time, in a small, quiet village nestled among rolling hills and fertile fields, there lived a humble farmer. He wasn't the wealthiest or the most talkative man in the village, but he was known by all his neighbors for his relentless hard work and, most notably, his preternaturally calm demeanor. His farm was modest. He had a small plot of land, a simple home, and one horse. This horse was his essential partner. It helped him plow the fields, carry his harvest to market, and perform every heavy task required for his survival. Though he didn't have much by the world's standards, the farmer was deeply content with his quiet, rhythmic life. Then, one morning, the farmer woke to disaster. His horse, his only horse, his livelihood, had broken through the fence during the night and run away. Gone. The stable was empty. The news spread through the small village like wildfire. His neighbors, hearing of this catastrophe, rushed to his house to express their sympathy. They gathered around, shaking their heads, their faces full of concern. "What terrible, terrible luck," they exclaimed. "Your only horse. How will you manage the planting? How will you bring your crops to market? This is a disaster. Such a misfortune." The farmer, however, listened to their lamentations. He looked at his worried neighbors. And he simply replied, with the same calm he always carried, "Maybe." The neighbors were puzzled. Flummoxed. Maybe? How could he be so indifferent to such obvious bad luck? They shook their heads, talking amongst themselves as they returned to their homes, convinced the poor farmer was in denial about the severity of his loss. A few days later, something remarkable happened. Early in the morning, the farmer's horse returned. But it didn't come back alone. It brought with it an entire herd of magnificent wild horses from the mountains, strong, beautiful animals, maybe 7 or 8 of them. They trotted right into his corral alongside his returned steed. Now, the farmer who had owned just one horse, suddenly had many. The neighbors heard this news and rushed back, this time with faces alight with excitement and a touch of envy. "How wonderful!" they cried. "What incredible fortune! Now you have so many horses. You can plow 3 times as much land. You can sell the extras and become rich. This is the best luck imaginable." The farmer again looked at his ebullient neighbors. He smiled the same calm, slight smile. And he said, again, "Maybe." Once more, the neighbors were utterly confused. Surely this was an unambiguous stroke of fantastic good luck. But the farmer seemed just as unperturbed, just as non-committal, as he had been when facing disaster. They wondered if he understood just how fortunate he was. A few days later, the farmer's son, his strong, able-bodied son who was his right hand on the farm, decided to try taming one of the new wild horses. They were powerful, spirited beasts. While attempting to ride one particularly fiery stallion, he was thrown violently to the hard ground. The injury was severe, his leg was badly broken. In those days, such an injury meant months, perhaps a full season, of being unable to work. He would be bedridden, a burden rather than a help. Hearing of this accident, the neighbors returned to the farmer's house for a 3rd time. Now, their faces were once again drawn with sympathy. "Oh, what dreadful luck," they sighed. "Your son has broken his leg. Now he cannot help you with the harvest, with all the work. And with all those new horses to care for. This is truly unfortunate, a setback." As before, the farmer responded with his signature calmness. "Maybe," he said. The neighbors were now thoroughly baffled. Every time something significant happened in this man's life, whether it appeared fantastically good or terribly bad, he met it with the same nonchalant, one-word response. They couldn't comprehend his equanimity. Why wouldn't he react? Why wouldn't he celebrate his windfall or mourn his misfortune? A few weeks passed. Then, the country was thrown into sudden, violent turmoil. A war broke out with a neighboring kingdom. The king's soldiers marched into the village, their armor clanking, their faces stern. They were there to conscript, to draft, all the able-bodied young men of the village into the army. It was a brutal, deadly conflict, and everyone knew that many of those taken would never return. One by one, the village's sons, the neighbors' sons, were taken away, their mothers weeping at the doors. But when the soldiers came to the farmer's house, they looked at his son with the badly broken leg, still in a splint, unable to walk. They passed him over. He was useless to the army. He would stay home with his father. Once again, the neighbors visited the farmer. This time, their emotions were a complex mix of their own grief and a stunned admiration for the farmer's seeming prescience. "How fortunate you are," they said, their voices heavy. "Because of your son's injury, he was spared from the war. He gets to live. What amazing, miraculous luck." And once again, the farmer, tending to his now many horses, looked at them and replied, with a gentle nod, "Maybe. The Buddha taught, nothing is permanent. Everything is subject to change. Being is always becoming." This fundamental, flowing truth forms the very foundation of the farmer's seemingly simple wisdom. His consistent, calm response of "maybe" reflects a deep, embodied understanding that life is in constant, dynamic flux. What appears favorable or fortunate in one isolated moment, may reveal itself to be the seed of challenge in the next. And what appears to be crushing misfortune, may contain the kernel of future salvation. We simply cannot see the whole tapestry from the single thread we are holding. Why do we rush so urgently to judge events as definitively good or bad? Zen Buddhism points directly to our mind's habitual, automatic categorization. Its constant, unconscious sorting of experiences into dualistic buckets, desirable/undesirable, fortunate/unfortunate, success/failure. This dualistic thinking creates an emotional roller coaster. We are elated, puffed up with pride, when things go well. We are devastated, crushed by despair, when things go poorly. But as the farmer's story so elegantly shows, we never have the complete picture. We cannot see how today's apparent misfortune might prevent tomorrow's disaster. Or how today's apparent blessing might lead to tomorrow's unforeseen difficulty. The concept of non-judgment in Zen doesn't mean becoming indifferent or apathetic. The farmer wasn't emotionally detached from his life. He cared for his horse. He loved his son. He depended on his farm. Rather, he possessed what the Buddha called equanimity, *upekkha* in Pali. A balanced, steady perspective that remains unshaken amid life's inevitable and constant ups and downs. He cared deeply. But he didn't allow his inner peace, his core stability, to be held hostage by the changing circumstances of the external world. Zen master Singtiesen wrote in the timeless poem Hsan Ming, "The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences." When we stop insisting, demanding, that life conform to our personal, limited ideas of how things should be, we discover a deeper, truer kind of freedom. We open ourselves to life's inherent, often mysterious wisdom, which unfolds in ways our narrow, time-bound perspective can rarely anticipate. The Buddha taught, "Do not overrate what you have received, nor envy others. He who envies others does not obtain peace of mind." How often do we compare our circumstances to those of others, concluding that we are either uniquely blessed or uniquely cursed based on these superficial comparisons? The farmer's neighbors were constantly evaluating his situation based on their own snap judgments of good and bad. They were on the roller coaster. The farmer himself remained serenely off the ride, free from these limiting, exhausting perspectives. Our modern lives are filled with opportunities to practice this maybe mindset. The promotion you didn't get, that leads you to a completely different, more fulfilling opportunity 6 months later. The painful ending of a relationship. That creates the necessary space for a period of profound self-discovery and growth. The illness that forces you to slow down, and in doing so, to reassess your entire hierarchy of what truly matters. The financial setback, that teaches you resilience and creativity you never knew you had. In retrospect, many of us can identify seeming misfortunes that ultimately led to growth or unexpected blessings. The farmer had the wisdom to hold that perspective in the present moment, not just in hindsight. The 13th century poet Rumi, from a different tradition but speaking the same universal wisdom, captured it perfectly. What appears to be a curse may be a blessing, and what appears to be a blessing may be a curse. The farmer embodied this understanding not as an intellectual concept to quote, but as a lived reality. His maybe wasn't passive resignation. It was active wisdom. It was the recognition that life's full story is still being written, and our chapter titles are often premature. The Buddha said, "In the sky, there is no distinction of east and west." People create distinctions out of their own minds and then believe them to be true. Similarly, the distinctions of good luck and bad luck are our own mental creations. Reality itself is simply a flowing, interconnected web of causes and conditions, of events unfolding. It is neither inherently positive nor negative. It just is. Our labels are the source of our joy and our pain. Tonight, as you rest, reflect gently on recent events in your own life that you've quickly labeled as good luck or bad luck. Try, just as an experiment, holding them with the farmer's gentle, spacious maybe. Notice how this perspective might ease the anxious knot in your stomach about a negative situation. Notice how it might temper the giddy attachment to a positive one, protecting you from future disappointment. Can you find a sense of freedom in simply suspending judgment about how things should be? As the Buddha taught, with our thoughts, we make the world. The farmer's maybe is a powerful reminder that we always have a choice in how we interpret, how we frame our experiences. And this choice has profound, immediate implications for our peace of mind, for the quality of our sleep, for the texture of our lives. Our next story reveals the transformative power of non-reactivity, the mastery of one's own emotional landscape. This is the story of the Buddha, and the angry man ***. Once, while the Buddha was teaching a gathered group of his disciples in a serene forest grove, a man approached. But this was not a seeker coming in peace. This man strode into the clearing with anger burning in his eyes, his body tense with hostility. He had heard of the Buddha's growing influence, his wisdom that attracted followers from all walks of life. And this knowledge festered in him, breeding jealousy and resentment. He felt threatened, insulted by the Buddha's very existence. So, he decided to confront him. To insult him publicly, to humiliate him in front of his own followers, to prove this so-called enlightened one was a fraud. As the Buddha sat calmly under the generous shade of a Bodhi tree, the man stormed up to him and began hurling insults, his voice cutting through the peaceful atmosphere like a rusty blade. "You," he shouted, pointing an accusatory finger. "You are nothing but a fraud. A charlatan. Who do you think you are? You sit there, pretending to be so wise, so enlightened, but you're just deceiving these simple people. You're a poison to this land." The Buddha remained completely calm. He didn't flinch. His serene expression didn't change. He simply sat, listening, as if the man were describing the weather. He didn't respond to the anger at all. Seeing this utter lack of reaction only poured fuel on the man's furious fire. How dare he be ignored? He shouted even louder, his face reddening. "How can you just sit there? Acting like you're above everyone else? Do you think your silence makes you better than me? I refuse to respect a deceiver like you. You're worthless." Despite the torrent of fury, the vitriol, the personal attacks, the Buddha stayed silent and serene. He simply watched the man, with what appeared to be compassion. As one might watch a child in the throes of a tantrum. Finally, after several minutes of relentless shouting, the man grew physically exhausted. He had expected a fight. He had expected to provoke a defensive response, an argument, a flash of anger to match his own. The Buddha's peaceful, unmovable demeanor confused him utterly. It deflated him. He stood there, chest heaving, catching his breath. The silence of the forest, and of the watching disciples, felt suddenly heavy. "Why?" the man demanded, his voice now hoarse. "Why won't you say anything? Why won't you defend yourself? Don't you care what I think of you? Don't you care about your honor?" The Buddha looked at him, his gaze kind and clear. Finally, he spoke, his voice as soft and steady as a deep river. "Tell me," the Buddha asked gently, "if someone offers you a gift, and you decline to accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man, thrown by this seemingly irrelevant question, frowned. He thought for a moment. "Well, it would still belong to the person who offered it. If I don't take it, the gift remains theirs." The Buddha nodded slowly. "Exactly. And in the same way, if you offer me your anger, your insults, your judgment, and I do not accept them, then who do they belong to?" The man was stunned. Struck silent. The truth of the Buddha's words landed in him with the weight of a mountain. He realized, in a flash of insight, that his anger had not touched the Buddha at all. It had not disturbed his peace, tarnished his honor, or affected him in any way. Instead, the anger, the bitterness, the hostility, it had remained his own burden to carry. He had been holding the hot coal the entire time, burning only himself. The Buddha continued, his voice still gentle. "If I refuse to accept your insults and your anger, they fall back on you. You are the one who suffers from them, not me. I choose not to be troubled by your words. I choose peace." The man stood in the deepening silence, contemplating what had just happened. He realized that his anger had consumed him, twisted his face, tightened his chest, stolen his peace. But it had held no power over the Buddha, who remained unaffected, anchored in a stillness the man had never known. In that moment, he understood the Buddha's earlier teaching in his very bones: holding on to anger only harms the one who holds it. Feeling ashamed, and yet somehow lighter, the man bowed his head. "Master," he said, his voice now quiet, stripped of its fury. "I see now. My anger has only caused me pain. It has been my own prison. How can I learn to be at peace, as you are?" The Buddha smiled warmly, his compassion shining like the sun after a storm. "Anger," he said, "is like picking up a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. But in the very act of picking it up, you are the one who gets burned. Let go of the coal. Let go of your anger. Instead, practice mindfulness. Practice compassion. Practice understanding. Through these, you will find the peace you seek." The man, humbled to his core by this practical wisdom, thanked the Buddha and bowed deeply. From that day forward, he sought to practice the teachings, learning to let go of his reactive anger and to find, within himself, the peace he had witnessed. The Buddha's teaching here is surgical in its precision: you will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. This profound insight illuminates the fundamental mechanism of why reactive emotions cause us such profound suffering. When we carry anger, resentment, or hatred, we damage ourselves far more than we could ever damage the person toward whom these emotions are directed. Every moment spent simmering in anger is a moment stolen from peace. Every calorie of mental energy spent on revenge is energy diverted from our own healing and growth. Why, then, do we cling so tightly, so tenaciously, to our anger? Zen Buddhism identifies several powerful, deeply rooted factors that make anger particularly difficult to release. First is our powerful sense of righteousness. The belief that our anger is justified, and therefore noble, worth holding on to. We confuse letting go of anger with condoning the behavior that triggered it. But the Buddha's teaching masterfully decouples these two. We can establish clear boundaries, seek justice, address wrongs, without poisoning our own inner well with the reactive emotions of anger and hatred. Action can be clear, firm, and compassionate, without being fueled by personal animosity. Second is our deep-seated identification with our emotions. We don't say, "Anger is arising." We say, "I am angry." This subtle language reflects a profound merger. We make the emotion inseparable from our core sense of self. When someone suggests we let go of anger, it can feel like they're asking us to let go of a part of who we are. Zen practice teaches us to create a crucial space between our pure awareness and the emotional weather passing through it. We learn to observe the anger without becoming the anger. Third is our pervasive cultural conditioning around anger. Many of us are taught, explicitly or implicitly, that anger is power. That it motivates decisive action. That it commands respect. That to be without it is to be weak, passive, a doormat. We fear that without our anger, we might be taken advantage of. The Buddha's response to the angry man demonstrates true power. Not the brittle, reactive force of aggression, but the stable, immovable, resilient strength of equanimity. It is the power of a mountain, not the power of a volcano. The Buddha said, "Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed." This is an ancient and eternal law. This teaching invites us to examine our most basic assumption, that anger is an effective, useful response to mistreatment. Does meeting hostility with hostility ever truly resolve the underlying causes of conflict? Or does it simply perpetuate an endless, exhausting cycle of reactivity and retaliation? The metaphor of the gift is particularly illuminating. It suggests that emotions like anger, criticism, and judgment require our acceptance, our participation, to affect us. When someone directs negativity toward us, we have a choice, often one we don't realize we have. We can accept this psychic energy, absorb it, believe its narrative, and allow it to disturb our inner peace. Or, we can decline the offering. We can say, mentally, "Thank you, but I choose not to accept this." This doesn't mean becoming emotionally disconnected or indifferent to injustice. Look at the Buddha, he didn't ignore the angry man. He remained fully present, engaged, and responsive. But he responded from a place of compassion and wisdom, rather than from ego defense and reactivity. This is the essence of non-reactivity in Zen, not withdrawal, but engagement from a different quality of awareness. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh teaches a beautiful practice called embracing anger with mindfulness. It involves recognizing anger the moment it arises, breathing with it, and treating it with the same gentle, firm care we would show a crying baby, acknowledging its presence without being controlled by it. Rather than suppressing anger or expressing it mindlessly, we acknowledge it with kind awareness, understanding its causes and its impermanent nature. The Buddha taught, if you truly loved yourself, you would never harm another. This points to the beautiful, practical interconnection between self-care and care for others. When we react with anger, we harm ourselves first and most directly. Choosing peace over reactivity is not a selfless sacrifice for others, it is the most profound, intelligent form of self-care. It is choosing not to drink the poison ourselves. Tonight, as you rest, you might reflect on interactions from your day, or from your past, that triggered feelings of anger or resentment. Experiment with the Buddha's gift metaphor. Can you recognize that you have a choice, a real, powerful choice, about whether to accept the gifts of others' negativity? Can you feel the freedom, the lightness, that comes from mentally, gently, declining these toxic offerings? Remember the Buddha's vivid words. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. In releasing that coal, in choosing not to grasp it, you free not only yourself, but you create the only space where genuine resolution and understanding can possibly grow. Let us now explore a story about the liberating wisdom of impermanence and the practice of non-attachment. This is the story of the monk and the teacup ***. In a quiet Zen monastery, high in the mist-shrouded mountains, there lived a revered monk. His students admired him not for dramatic feats or eloquent speeches, but for the depth of his contemplation and the unwavering quality of his mindful presence. He seemed to carry a profound calm with him, a calm that was never disturbed by the small chaos of daily monastic life. Every day, as part of their ritual, the monk would sit in meditation, drink tea, and share simple lessons with his students. One afternoon, during their usual, silent tea ceremony, the monk did something unexpected. He held up his simple, unglazed clay teacup. He gazed at it for a long, quiet moment, turning it slowly in his hands. The cup was beautiful in its humble simplicity, an earthy brown color, a slightly irregular shape made by human hands, not a machine. It felt warm and alive. The students, curious about their master's silent contemplation, waited patiently, eagerly, to hear what he might say about this ordinary object. After a few moments, the monk smiled a gentle, knowing smile. He looked at his students and said, softly but clearly, "This teacup is already broken." The students glanced at one another, confusion plain on their faces. They could see perfectly well that the teacup was whole, undamaged. Not a chip or crack to be seen. It was perfectly intact, sitting there in their master's hand. One of the younger students, unable to contain his curiosity, spoke up. "Master, forgive me, but the teacup is not broken. It is perfectly fine." Why do you say it is already broken?" The monk, still smiling, placed the teacup gently on the low wooden table in front of him. "In my mind," he said, his voice calm and steady, "this teacup is already broken. It may seem whole now. It may function perfectly now. But one day, perhaps tomorrow, perhaps next year, perhaps 10 years from now, it will break. It will fall. It will chip. It will shatter. This is inevitable. It is the nature of all clay things." He paused, letting the certainty of that statement settle in the quiet room. "When I understand that it is already broken, I can fully appreciate it as it is, in this moment, without clinging to it. I can enjoy the warmth of the tea within it, the feel of it in my hand, the sight of its simple beauty. Knowing that its life in this form is temporary. I am free to enjoy it completely, because I am not holding on out of fear of its loss." The students were silent, absorbing the weight of their master's words. They began to realize he wasn't speaking only about a teacup. He was offering them a key to understanding life itself. The monk continued, "Everything in life is like this teacup. All things, no matter how beautiful, how precious, how beloved, are impermanent. We cannot hold on to them forever. We cannot freeze them in time. When we truly understand that, deeply in our hearts, we are free. Free to enjoy life fully, without the underlying fear of losing what we have. We can appreciate each moment, each relationship, each experience, knowing that it, too, will pass. And when it is gone, when it changes, we will not suffer as greatly. Because we have already accepted its impermanent nature. We loved it because it was fleeting, not in spite of it." One of the older students, his brow furrowed in thought, asked, "Master, does this mean we should not love or care for things? Because they will one day be gone. Should we guard our hearts against attachment?" The monk shook his head gently. "No," he said. "It means quite the opposite. When we accept the impermanence of all things, we can love them more deeply, more truly. Because we are not holding on out of fear of loss. We are not clinging to an illusion of permanence. We love and appreciate them for what they are, in this moment. We understand that they are part of the natural, beautiful flow of life, arising, persisting for a time, and passing away. In this way, we can live with a peaceful, open heart, unburdened by the crushing weight of attachment to things that are, by their very nature, bound to change. The Buddha taught, all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with insight, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This profound, unflinching truth lies at the heart of the teacup story. It points to one of the most liberating, and often most challenging, aspects of Zen practice, embracing impermanence not as a philosophical idea, but as a lived reality. A reality we lean into, not run from. Why do we resist this truth so fiercely? Why do we cling? Zen Buddhism identifies our fundamental misunderstanding of reality as the root. We perceive things, our bodies, our possessions, our relationships, our identities, as solid, separate, and lasting, when, in fact, they are fluid, interconnected, and transient. This misperception leads directly to what Buddhists call attachment or clinging, our desperate, exhausting attempt to hold on to things that, by their intrinsic nature, cannot be held. Consider how this attachment manifests in your own daily life. We become attached to our possessions, fearing their loss or damage, investing them with meaning they don't possess. We cling to relationships, trying to prevent them from evolving, from changing, from ending. We hold fiercely to our youth, our health, our capabilities, resisting the natural, dignified process of aging. We even become attached to our ideas, our opinions, our political views, our very sense of who I am, defending these mental constructs as if they were permanent fixtures, rather than the fluid, changing stories they are. The monk's declaration, "This teacup is already broken," offers a radically different, profoundly freeing way of relating to impermanence. Instead of denying it, fighting it, or being ambushed by it, he embraces it preemptively. By acknowledging the inevitable end of all things from the very beginning, he liberates himself from the anxiety, the futile effort, of trying to prevent the unpreventable. This isn't pessimism. It is clear-eyed realism that, paradoxically, enhances his appreciation of the present moment. Because he knows it won't last, he is more present for it, not less. The Buddha said, "The world is afflicted by death and decay, but the wise do not grieve, having realized the nature of the world." This teaching isn't encouraging coldness, callousness, or detachment from caring. Rather, it points to a different quality of caring. One not distorted by the impossible, painful expectation of permanence. The monk doesn't love his teacup less because he knows it will break. He loves it more precisely because its existence in this form is fleeting, and therefore precious. Zen master Shunryu Suzuki explained this beautiful paradox. When we understand the truth of impermanence and find our composure in it, we find ourselves in nirvana. This composure isn't achieved by numbing ourselves to loss or resigning ourselves to it with a sigh. It is achieved by fully embracing the nature of reality. It's a composure that allows for deep, passionate engagement with life, precisely because we're not constantly fighting against its fundamental characteristics. In practical terms, how might we cultivate this already broken perspective? We can start simply, gently. Notice your attachments, the people, things, and circumstances you most fear losing. Rather than trying to suppress this fear, which only strengthens it, can you gently acknowledge the temporary nature of these precious aspects of your life? Can you practice saying to yourself, quietly, "This too will pass"? Not as a dreary reminder of doom, but as an invitation to cherish the present moment more fully. To put down the phone and really look at your loved one's face. To savor the taste of your food. To feel the sun on your skin now. The Buddha taught, neither fire nor wind, birth nor death, can erase our good deeds. This points to another facet of the already broken wisdom. While all material things, including our physical bodies, are impermanent, the impact of our actions, the love we share, the kindness we offer, the wisdom we cultivate, these qualities have a resonance that transcends form. By focusing our energy on cultivating these imperishable qualities, wisdom, compassion, mindfulness, we find a different kind of security. A security not in the cup, but in the quality of the tea we share from it while we have it. Tonight, as you rest here, consider what teacups in your life you might be clinging to with anxiety about their eventual breaking. Can you experiment, just for tonight, with the monk's perspective? Can you mentally acknowledge their impermanence, not as a threat, but as the reality that makes them precious and calls you to be present? Can you hold them lightly, appreciating them fully, precisely because you know you cannot hold them forever? As the Buddha said, the trouble is, you think you have time. The clear recognition of impermanence doesn't diminish life's beauty. It intensifies it. It invites us to appreciate fully, love deeply, and be completely present for what is here, before it inevitably, naturally, transforms. Now, let us explore a story about the essence of true generosity, about compassion that sees real need. This is the story of the Buddha, and the robe, ***. In ancient India, during the years when the Buddha traveled from village to town, sharing his teachings, he naturally attracted many followers. People from all castes and walks of life were moved by his message of liberation. Many left their homes to become monks and nuns, adopting a life of simplicity under his guidance. One day, while the Buddha and his Sangha were staying near a prosperous village, a very wealthy merchant heard of his presence. This merchant was a good man, successful in his trade, and he felt a stirring in his heart to pay respect to this great teacher. He wanted to offer a gift worthy of the Buddha's stature. So, he commissioned the finest weavers. He brought forth a truly magnificent robe. It was woven from the most expensive, luminous silk, richly adorned with intricate, delicate patterns in threads of gold and silver. It was a robe fit for a king, or a god. The merchant approached the Buddha where he sat, bowed with great reverence, and presented the luxurious robe. "Lord Buddha," he said, his voice full of sincere respect, "I wish to offer you this humble robe as a token of my gratitude for your teachings, which have illuminated my mind." The Buddha looked at the exquisite robe. Then he looked at the merchant, seeing his sincerity, his genuine desire to give. The Buddha himself, however, lived a life of radical simplicity. His needs were few. He taught his followers that freedom came not from accumulation, but from knowing what was enough. He already wore a simple, patched robe of humble cloth. It was all he needed. "Thank you for your kind and generous gesture," the Buddha said, his voice warm. But I cannot accept this robe. The merchant was taken aback. But Lord Buddha, I offer this out of the deepest respect for you. Surely, you deserve the very best that I can give. The Buddha smiled, his eyes gentle. If you truly wish to honor me, he replied, there is another way you can use this gift. A way that would bring greater merit and more genuine joy. Take this beautiful robe, and offer it to someone who is truly in need. Someone who lacks even the basic clothing to cover themselves, to protect themselves from the cold. That act would honor the teachings far more than giving it to one who already has enough. The merchant stood quietly, absorbing the Buddha's words. He realized the profound compassion and practical wisdom in them. The true essence of giving was not about offering lavish gifts to those already revered, but about addressing actual suffering, actual need. He bowed again, understanding dawning in his eyes. Thank you, Lord Buddha. I will do as you say. The merchant left. Later that day, he walked through the poorer quarters of the village. He found a man shivering in the cold evening air, dressed in little more than tattered rags that did nothing to keep out the chill. The man was gaunt, his eyes downcast. Without a word of pomp, the merchant approached him and offered the magnificent silk robe. The poor man was overcome, not just by the value of the gift, but by the sheer, unexpected kindness of it. He was warm for the first time in years. The next day, the merchant returned to the Buddha. He shared what he had done, the joy he had seen in the poor man's face, and the strange, warm feeling that had settled in his own heart. The Buddha nodded approvingly. You have done well, my friend. True generosity is not measured by the cost of the gift, nor by the status of the receiver. True generosity is in helping those who are in real need. By sharing your wealth with those who have less, you have done more than give a robe. You have brought true warmth, true compassion, into the world. And you have brought joy to your own heart. This is the highest form of giving. The merchant bowed deeply, feeling that warmth in his heart solidify into a new understanding. He realized the Buddha's wisdom extended far beyond the simple act of receiving a gift. It was about understanding the nature of giving, the importance of discernment and compassion, and the unique joy that comes from helping others without any thought of personal gain or recognition. The Buddha taught, generosity brings happiness at every stage of its expression. We experience joy in forming the intention to be generous. We experience joy in the actual act of giving. And we experience joy in recollecting the fact that we have given. This profound insight reveals that true generosity is not merely a transaction, a transfer of material goods. It is a transformative process for the giver's own heart and mind. It weakens the chains of self-centeredness and strengthens our felt connection to others. Why did the Buddha refuse the luxurious robe? Zen Buddhism points to several layers of exquisite wisdom in his simple response. First, he embodied the principle of knowing what is enough. He understood that desires, when left unchecked and unexamined, can never be satisfied. By being genuinely content with his simple, patched robe, the Buddha demonstrated a tangible freedom from the endless, exhausting cycle of wanting more and better. He was free from the burden of possession. Second, the Buddha recognized that true generosity is guided by wisdom, not social convention. It's not about the status of the recipient, but about the genuine need being met. By redirecting the merchant's gift towards someone actually suffering from the cold, he taught that compassionate action should be intelligent, discerning. It should go where it can actually alleviate suffering, not where it will simply adorn an already comfortable life. Third, the Buddha's response showed his deep understanding of the merchant's own motivation. The merchant wanted to express reverence and gain spiritual merit. The Buddha, in his compassion, showed him a more profound, more effective way to accomplish both, by directly alleviating the suffering of another human being. This act would generate far greater merit and express a deeper reverence for the Buddha's teachings of compassion than any lavish offering ever could. In our consumer-driven culture, we often equate giving with purchasing. We buy expensive gifts for people who already have abundance. We measure the value of our generosity by the price tag, not by the actual impact on the recipient's well-being. The Buddha's teaching is a gentle, revolutionary invitation to reconsider. To ask ourselves, where can my resources, material, emotional, attentional, do the most genuine good? The Buddha said, "If you knew what I know about the power of giving, you would not let a single meal pass without sharing it in some way." This points to the transformative, almost magical potential of genuine generosity. It transforms not just the recipient's situation, but the giver's heart. Each sincere act of giving weakens our habitual self-centeredness and strengthens our visceral understanding that our well-being is intertwined with the well-being of all beings. Zen practice encourages us to cultivate dana paramitha, the perfection of giving. This involves not just material generosity, but giving our time, our full attention, our energy, our patience, our forgiveness. Sometimes, the most precious, needed gift we can offer another person is simply our full, undistracted presence. To listen deeply, without waiting for our turn to speak. To be truly with them. The story also highlights the importance of discernment in giving. The Buddha didn't suggest the merchant simply keep the robe for himself or sell it. He directed him with precision, find someone in genuine need. This discernment requires us to look deeply at situations, to move beyond habitual, sometimes lazy, patterns of giving that may not actually address the root of suffering. The Buddha taught, the greatest gift is the act of giving itself. This points to the interior transformation, the opening of the heart, that happens when we give from a place of genuine compassion rather than from obligation, social expectation, or the desire for recognition. When we give in this selfless way, we experience what Buddhists call mudita, sympathetic joy, a pure happiness in the happiness and relief of others. Tonight, as you rest, reflect gently on your own acts of giving. Do they align with the Buddha's teaching in this story? Are there ways you might redirect your resources, whether material, emotional, or simply your attention, toward those in more genuine need? Can you notice the difference in feeling between giving that comes from a sense of social duty, and giving that flows spontaneously from a feeling of connected compassion? Remember the Buddha's words. If beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would the stain of selfishness overcome their minds. True generosity is the antidote to the prison of self-concern. And it begins with seeing real need, and responding from the heart. Let us now explore a lesser-known but deeply insightful Zen story that reveals a profound truth about controlling our thoughts, about the burdens we carry long after the event has passed. This is the story of the two monks, and the river, ***. Two monks, an elder and a younger disciple, were traveling together on a long pilgrimage. Their path took them through deep forests, over rugged mountains, and across wide valleys. For most of their journey, they walked in mindful silence, focusing on each step, each breath, using the travel itself as their meditation. As they approached a wide river, swollen from the recent spring rains, they saw a young woman standing at the water's edge. She was beautifully, elaborately dressed in fine, colorful silks and an ornate sash. She appeared deeply distressed, staring at the muddy, rushing water, afraid to cross. She feared the current would ruin her expensive clothes, pull her under, possibly put her life in danger. Upon seeing the monks, her face lit with hope. She called out to them, "Please, kind sirs. Could you help me? I must reach the other side, but I am terrified to cross this water alone." Without a moment's hesitation, the elder monk walked over to the woman. He bowed slightly. Then, gently, he lifted her in his arms. He carried her carefully across the swift, knee-deep current, setting her down safely and dryly on the opposite bank. The woman thanked him profusely with a deep bow, her fear replaced by gratitude. She continued on her way. The two monks also crossed the river. And then, without a word, they resumed their journey. They continued walking in silence. But as the hours passed, the younger monk appeared more and more troubled. His brow was furrowed. He kept glancing sideways at his elder companion, his expression a mix of confusion, disapproval, and inner conflict. After several hours of this tense, silent walking, the younger monk could no longer contain himself. It burst out of him. "Master," he said, his voice strained. "As monks, we have taken sacred vows. We are not supposed to go near women, much less touch them. It is dangerous. It can lead to temptation, to breaking our precepts. How could you carry that woman across the river?" The elder monk looked at his young companion. He didn't look angry or defensive. He simply looked at him with a gentle, patient smile. And he replied, "My brother, I left the woman at the riverbank hours ago. Why, are you still carrying her?" The younger monk was struck silent, as if physically hit by the words. He realized the truth with the force of a thunderclap. While his elder companion had only carried the woman for a few minutes, out of straightforward compassion and practical necessity, he himself had been carrying her. Carrying her in his mind. For hours. He had burdened himself with judgment, with criticism, with rules, with mental commentary. He had disturbed his own peace, polluted his own meditation, with a burden his companion had simply put down. The Buddha taught, what we think, we become. This fundamental truth illuminates why the younger monk's mental burden was so much heavier, so much more exhausting, than any physical weight the elder monk had temporarily carried. While the elder monk responded to the immediate human need with compassion and then returned completely to the present moment, the younger monk remained trapped in the past. He was replaying the scene, judging it, building a case around it, long after the event itself was over. Why do we, like the younger monk, so often carry unnecessary, invisible mental burdens? Zen Buddhism identifies several habitual factors that contribute to this self-created suffering. First is our attachment to rules and concepts over principles. The younger monk was so fixated on the letter of the monastic rule, "Do not touch women," that he completely missed its spirit, to live with purity of mind and intention, free from lust and attachment. His rigid, fearful interpretation blinded him to seeing his elders' action as a spontaneous, selfless expression of genuine Buddhist compassion, which is the highest principle of all. Second is our powerful tendency toward judgment and mental proliferation. One thought leads to another, and another, creating elaborate, often painful, internal narratives and evaluations that pull us far away from the simple reality of the present moment. The younger monk's initial observation, "He touched a woman," led to hours of internal drama. This is wrong. He's breaking the rules. What will others think? Is my master flawed? What does this mean for my practice? Each thought was another brick in a mental wall separating him from peace. Third is our difficulty distinguishing between skillful concern and unskillful rumination. Reflection on past actions can be valuable for learning. But obsessive dwelling, replaying, and judging serves no purpose except to disturb our peace and cloud our present moment awareness. The elder monk demonstrated the essential skill, to act decisively, compassionately, when needed, and then to let go completely. To not allow the past to become a permanent resident in the present. In our daily lives, we all carry similar invisible burdens. The argument from last week that we keep mentally rehearsing, refining our winning points. The mistake at work that we can't stop replaying, accompanied by a soundtrack of self-criticism. The anxiety about a future conversation that we pre-live a dozen times. Each of these mental patterns is exactly like carrying a person across a river. And then never, ever putting them down. We carry them while we eat, while we work, while we try to relax, while we try to sleep. The Buddha said, "Let go of the past. Let go of the future. Let go of the present." Crossing to the farther shore of existence, with mind released from everything, do not take up residence in birth and death. This teaching points to the profound freedom available when we release our mental fixations and return, again and again, to the simplicity and immediacy of the present moment. Zen practice offers us concrete, gentle methods for putting down our mental burdens. Mindfulness meditation trains us to notice when we're carrying unnecessary thoughts, to see the person we've picked up. The simple practice of labeling thoughts, thinking, helps us recognize them as transient mental constructs, not solid reality. And returning our focus to physical sensations, the feeling of our feet on the ground, the rhythm of our breath, anchors us firmly in the now when our thoughts try to drag us into the past or future. The elder monk embodies what Zen calls mushin, no mind. Not the absence of thought, but freedom from attachment to thought. He could think clearly when needed, "This woman needs help." He could act compassionately when required, carrying her across. And then, he could return to the peaceful, empty clarity of the present moment. This state is not reserved for masters. It is available to all of us, when we learn to put down what no longer needs to be carried. Tonight, as thoughts arise about the day behind you, conversations, tasks, irritations, or about the day ahead, can you notice when you're unnecessarily carrying someone or something in your mind? Can you feel the weight of it? And can you feel the freedom, the lightness, that comes from gently, consciously, setting that burden down? You can always pick it up again tomorrow if you truly need to. But for now, for this night of rest, you can put it down. Remember the Buddha's liberating words, "Nothing is worth clinging to." In that release, lies true peace. Let us now turn to a story about the greatest obstacle to learning and growth, the obstacle we create in our own minds. This is the story of the empty cup, ****. A respected university professor, renowned for his scholarly knowledge of philosophy and world religions, once traveled a great distance to visit a remote Zen master. The professor had spent decades studying texts, writing papers, and debating ideas. He considered himself quite knowledgeable, but was intellectually curious about Zen's unique, seemingly paradoxical approach to wisdom. When he arrived at the master's simple hut, the old Zen master greeted him warmly and invited him to sit. Eager to begin, the professor launched in. "Master," he said, "I have come to inquire about Zen. I would like to understand your teachings, to know how they differ from the many other philosophies and religious systems I have already studied in great depth." The master smiled peacefully. "Let us have tea first," he said. "Then we can talk about Zen." The professor nodded, slightly impatient but respectful of the custom. He expected that after the ceremonial tea, they would engage in the deep, serious philosophical discussion he had traveled so far to have. The Zen master prepared the tea with slow, deliberate, utterly mindful movements. Heating the water. Measuring the leaves. When the tea was ready, he placed a cup in front of the professor and began to pour. The cup filled to the very brim. But the master did not stop pouring. The tea spilled over the rim. It flowed across the wooden table. It dripped onto the professor's fine clothes and onto the floor. The professor jumped up in alarm. "Stop! Stop! The cup is full. It can't hold any more. No more will go in." The Zen master stopped pouring. He looked directly at the flustered professor, his eyes clear and kind. "Like this cup," he said softly, "you are full. Full of your own opinions, your theories, your speculations, your assumptions. How can I show you Zen? Unless you first empty your cup." The professor was stunned into complete silence. In that humbling, electric moment, he realized the devastating truth. His extensive knowledge, his intellectual prowess, had become the very barrier to new understanding. His cup was so full of what he already knew, that there was no room for anything fresh, for direct experience, for a wisdom that might not fit his existing categories. With this insight, he bowed deeply to the master, his arrogance washed away. He was ready, finally, to truly begin learning. The Buddha taught, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. This teaching points to the critical importance of maintaining an open, receptive mind, what Zen calls shoshin, beginner's mind. When we approach life with the fresh, curious eyes of a beginner, we remain open to infinite possibilities, to wonder, to surprise. When we believe we already know, we close ourselves off. We see only what our existing knowledge allows us to see. Why do we so readily fill our cups to overflowing? Zen Buddhism identifies several powerful, human tendencies. First is our ego's deep need for certainty and control. By convincing ourselves that we understand how things are, we create a comforting illusion of security in a world that is inherently uncertain, mysterious, and fluid. Our opinions and beliefs become a mental fortress, protecting us from the vulnerable, alive state of not knowing. Second is our attachment to identity. So much of who we think we are is constructed from our accumulated knowledge, our experiences, our degrees, our viewpoints. To empty our cup can feel existentially threatening. It challenges our very sense of self. If I let go of what I know, who am I? This fear keeps us clinging to our filled cups, even when they've grown stale and are no longer serving us. Third is what we might call the comparing mind. Our habit of constantly measuring ourselves against others. In academic, professional, and even spiritual circles, knowing more becomes a source of status, recognition, and self-worth. The professor's entire identity and reputation were built on being knowledgeable, making it incredibly difficult for him to adopt the humble, open stance of a beginner, of not knowing. The consequences of a full cup extend far beyond just limiting our learning. When our minds are crammed with preconceptions, we experience life through thick filters. We don't see what is actually before us. We see what our existing knowledge tells us should be there. We miss the richness, the nuance, the sheer unexpectedness of reality, by forcing it to conform to our limited, pre-existing understanding. Zen practice offers specific, gentle methods for emptying our cup. Meditation trains us to observe how quickly we label, categorize, and judge experiences based on past knowledge. By noticing these mental habits as they happen, we create a tiny, crucial space between our pure awareness and our conceptual overlays. We practice, again and again, putting aside what we think we know, to encounter reality directly, freshly. The Buddha said, "With our thoughts, we make the world." When our thoughts are rigid, fixed, and full, the world we make is small, predictable, and sterile. When we empty our cup, approaching life with openness, humility, and wonder, the world reveals itself as boundless, mysterious, and full of awe. In your daily life, notice when you approach situations with a cup already full. Perhaps it's a conversation where you're formulating your response before the other person has even finished speaking. Or a routine activity you perform on autopilot, missing its unique qualities in this moment. Or a person you think you have completely figured out, leaving no room for them to surprise you, to change, to be more than your fixed idea of them. Tonight, as you rest and listen, experiment with emptying your cup. Let go, just for now, of what you think you know about relaxation, about sleep, about meditation, even about these very stories you're hearing. Can you listen with fresh ears, as if hearing these words for the very first time? Can you feel the spaciousness that emerges when you set aside, even briefly, the need to evaluate, to analyze, to categorize, to understand intellectually. As the Buddha poetically taught, empty your boat of water, it will go lightly and swiftly. Similarly, when we empty our minds of preconceptions, of the weight of what we know, we move through life, and toward sleep, with greater ease, grace, and unexpected joy. Now, let us explore a story about finding profound wisdom not in temples or texts, but in the most ordinary, even dirty, places. This is the story of the Zen master, and the dirty road, ****. A Zen master was traveling with a small group of his disciples along a muddy countryside road. The rainy season had turned the path into a quagmire, making their journey slow and messy. They walked mindfully, paying close attention to each step, to the sensation of mud pulling at their sandals. As they walked, they came upon a sight, a magnificent temple perched on a hill overlooking the road. It was breathtaking. Elaborate carvings adorned its eaves, golden statues gleamed in the damp air, and its gardens were meticulously maintained, a riot of perfect order and color against the gray day. The group decided to visit. When they entered, they found priests in immaculate, flowing robes conducting an elaborate ceremony. Their movements were precise, choreographed to the last detail. Their chanting was harmonious, beautiful, rising and falling in perfect rhythm. The atmosphere was one of refined sanctity. The disciples were visibly impressed by the temple's splendor and the priest's obvious dedication to their perfect rituals. After spending some time observing in silence, they gathered outside the temple gates. One disciple, his mind full of the beauty he'd witnessed, turned to his master. "Master," he asked, "what do you think of this temple and its practices? Is this the true path to enlightenment? Is this the way?" The Zen master didn't answer with words. Instead, he simply turned and began walking back down the hill toward the muddy road they had left. Puzzled, the disciples followed. When they reached the road, the master stopped at a particularly filthy, waterlogged section. He knelt down in the mud, without hesitation. He placed his hand directly into the thick, brown muck. Then, with his finger, he drew a simple, perfect circle in the muddy ground. He looked up at his confused disciples. His eyes were clear and bright. "The truth," he said quietly, "can be found here as well." The disciples were confused at first. But slowly, the meaning dawned on them, washing over them like a wave. The Master was showing them, in the most direct way possible, that enlightenment, truth, was not confined to beautiful temples, golden statues, or perfect rituals. The mud, ordinary, messy, commonly avoided, even reviled, contained the same ultimate reality as the golden temple. True wisdom could be found anywhere, at any time, by those with eyes to see. It wasn't about the purity of the setting, but the purity of the attention brought to it. The Buddha taught, if you cannot find the truth right where you are, where else do you expect to find it? This profound, grounding insight lies at the heart of the Zen master's mud circle. It directly challenges our deeply ingrained tendency to seek enlightenment, peace, and wisdom in special places, in extraordinary experiences, in perfect conditions, anywhere but the immediate, often messy, reality of our own lives. Why do we struggle to recognize the wisdom available in ordinary moments? Zen Buddhism points a finger at our habit of spiritual materialism, the tendency to turn spirituality into another form of acquisition and achievement. We believe enlightenment is found through accumulating special experiences, advanced teachings, exotic retreats, or esoteric credentials, rather than through penetrating the deep, simple reality of our everyday existence. The mud in this story represents all the aspects of life we typically try to avoid, transcend, or clean up: our messy emotions, our uncomfortable physical sensations, our tedious chores, our imperfect relationships, our frustrations, our failures. We imagine that spiritual growth means rising above these muddy realities, not realizing that they themselves contain the very wisdom, the very grit, we need for genuine awakening. In Japanese aesthetics, there is a celebrated concept called wabi-sabi. It is the art of finding beauty in imperfection, in impermanence, in incompleteness. The cracked teacup, the mossy stone, the weathered wood, the asymmetrical arrangement. The mud circle embodies this perspective perfectly. It invites us to discover profundity, beauty, and truth in what appears common, flawed, or dirty. These imperfections contain their own unique, grounded wisdom when seen with clear, unattached eyes. Zen Master Dogen wrote, "If you cannot find the truth where you are, where do you expect to find it?" This echoes the Buddha and points to the classic mistake of externalization, looking outside ourselves for what can only be found within. The temples we build, the rituals we perform, the texts we study, these are all fingers pointing to the moon. They are not the moon itself. The Master's circle in the mud was a finger pointing directly at the moon of present moment reality, in its raw, unadorned state. How might we apply the wisdom of the mud circle? We can start by bringing a curious, gentle attention to the ordinary moments we typically overlook or resent. Washing dishes. Sitting in traffic. Feeling tired or bored. Experiencing a moment of conflict or irritation. Rather than seeing these as obstacles to our real, spiritual practice or our peace, we can recognize them as the very ground of practice itself. The mud is our teacher. The Buddha said, "My teaching is not a philosophy. It is the result of direct experience." This points to the experiential nature of true wisdom. It's not something learned intellectually from a book. It is realized through immediate, direct contact with life itself. The mud on the road offered this direct experience in a way that observing the temple rituals from a distance, as a spectator, could not. One was lived, the other was observed. Tonight, as you rest in the quiet, consider the mud circles in your own life. The ordinary, challenging, or seemingly dirty aspects you typically try to avoid, fix, or rush through. Can you bring the same quality of attention to these experiences that you would to a beautiful sunset or a profound teaching? Can you sense the potential for wisdom, for grounding, for awakening, waiting to be discovered in these most unexpected, humble places? As the Buddha taught, all experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, created by mind. When we approach even the muddiest moments with an open, curious, compassionate mind, we transform them from obstacles into our very path. The path itself is made of earth. Let us now turn to a story about the nature of true mastery, about the unity that exists when the self gets out of its own way. This is the story of the master archer, ***. In ancient China, there was a master archer whose skill was legendary. His arrows never missed their mark. His reputation had spread across provinces, and even the emperor himself had recognized his almost supernatural talent, bestowing upon him great honors and riches. He was the standard against which all archers were measured. One day, a young, ambitious archer traveled far to meet this master. Having practiced for years and achieved considerable skill himself, he was burning with desire to reach the ultimate levels of mastery. He bowed deeply before the elder. "Master," he said, "I have practiced the bow for many years. I have good skill. But I wish to reach the highest level, as you have. Please, share with me the secret technique. What is the method that makes your arrows fly so true, that makes them never miss?" The master archer looked at the young man, measuring his sincerity and his ambition. "Meet me at dawn tomorrow," he said. "On the mountain. Bring your bow and arrows." The next morning, full of excitement, the young man arrived at the appointed spot, a high, windy cliff ledge. He expected a practice range with targets. Instead, the master led him to the very edge of the precipice, where the ground fell away hundreds of feet to a rocky valley below. The wind whipped at their clothes. The drop was dizzying. Standing at this precarious spot, the master took his position. With effortless, fluid movements, he drew his bow, aimed at a distant peak, and released. The arrow flew straight and true, vanishing into the distance. Then he turned to the student. "Now," he said calmly, "you stand here and shoot." The young archer's heart began to pound. He cautiously approached the edge. He looked down at the terrifying drop, and his stomach lurched. His palms grew sweaty. His knees felt weak. He tried to nock an arrow, but his hands were trembling. After several fumbling attempts, he stepped back from the edge, his face pale. I cannot shoot from here, master," he admitted, shame in his voice. "The height, it makes me dizzy. The fear, it makes my hands unsteady. How can anyone hit a target when they are afraid of falling to their death?" The master nodded, as if this was the expected answer. He spoke gently, his voice carrying over the wind. "This," he said, "is the secret you seek. The difference between us is not in our technique. It is not in the strength of our arms or the keenness of our eyesight. It is that when I shoot, there is only the arrow, the bow, and the target. There is no fear. There is no thought of success or failure. There is no awareness of being watched or praised. There is not even the self who is shooting. There is only the perfect unity. The archer, the bow, the arrow, and the target become one movement. One event." He continued, looking at the shaken young man. "You miss your mark not because your skill is lacking. You miss because you are divided. Part of you wants to shoot the arrow. But another part fears falling. Another part hopes for success. Another part worries about failure. Another part remains self-conscious, watching yourself. When you can shoot with your whole being, undivided by fear, by desire, by any thought at all, you will find the mastery you seek. The young archer bowed deeply, humbled and enlightened. He had traveled for a secret technique, but had received a lesson about the nature of mind, about the essence of mastery in any endeavor. He understood that true mastery was an interior state of unified attention, not an external collection of skills. The Buddha taught, your work is to discover your world and then with all your heart give yourself to it. This teaching perfectly captures the essence of the master archer's wisdom. True mastery in any field, archery, art, conversation, parenting, even resting, comes not from perfected technique alone, but from total presence. From the dissolution of the separate, anxious, evaluating self that creates division and interference within us. Why do we struggle so much to achieve this state of undivided attention? Zen Buddhism identifies several fragmenting factors. First is our habitual self-consciousness. That part of our mind that stands apart from our experience, like a critic in the balcony, constantly evaluating our performance, comparing us to others, seeking validation. This observing ego creates an artificial, debilitating separation between ourselves and our actions. Second is our attachment to outcomes. Our fixation on success/failure, praise/criticism, reward/punishment. When we shoot an arrow, literal or metaphorical, while obsessing about whether it will hit the target, we introduce tension, hesitation, and interference that corrupt the natural flow of action. We are aiming at two targets, the actual one, and the one in our mind labeled success. Third is our fear. The survival instinct that, while crucial in genuinely dangerous situations, often activates unnecessarily during ordinary challenges. The young archer's fear of falling represented all the ways we hold back from full commitment, full engagement, because of perceived risks to our safety, our status, our self-image. In Japanese Zen, this state of complete absorption is called mushin, no mind, or samadhi, one-pointed concentration. It's a condition where the distinction between subject and object dissolves. Action flows without the interference of self-conscious thought. Athletes call it being in the zone. Artists know it as being carried by the work. Musicians experience it as becoming one with the music. It is effort, without a sense of someone making effort. The Buddha said, just as a solid rock is not shaken by the storm, even so the wise are not affected by praise or blame. This steadiness, this unshakability, comes not from rigidity or stubbornness, but from complete immersion in the present activity. We are undistracted by concerns about how others perceive us or whether we measure up to some external standard. We are simply doing, completely. Zen practice cultivates this capacity through both formal meditation, *zazen*, and mindful engagement with everyday activities, *samu*. In Zazen, we practice letting go of thoughts, returning again and again to simple, undivided presence. In activities like archery, *kyudo*, calligraphy, *shodo*, the tea ceremony, *sado*, or even sweeping, we train in bringing this same quality of whole-being attention to action. You've likely experienced moments of this complete absorption in your own life. Perhaps while playing a sport, creating something, solving a complex problem, reading a captivating book, or even during a mundane, rhythmic task like knitting or gardening. In these moments, the separate, worried self temporarily dissolves. There is just the doing. And in that unity, there is a deep, quiet joy. The Master Archer's lesson applies to everything we do. Whether you're having a conversation, working on a project, caring for a child, or preparing for sleep. Can you bring your whole being to the activity? Can you notice when you're divided, part of you present, while another part worries, plans, or judges? Can you gently invite those fragmented parts to come home, to join the single point of attention that is this moment? As the Buddha taught, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. The satisfaction, the peace we seek, is not found in achieving perfect results. It is found in the quality of presence, the unity of attention we bring to each moment along the way. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, can you approach rest with the Archer's undivided attention? Rather than trying to force sleep, or worrying about getting enough rest, can you simply be with the experience of lying down? Feeling the weight of your body on the bed, the texture of the sheets, the rhythm of your breath. Can you let go of the Archer, who is trying to hit the target of sleep, and simply become the breath, the sensation, the darkness? Remember the Buddha's words, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. The tranquility you seek is available in the complete, undivided acceptance of this moment, just as it is. Our next story teaches us about finding creative solutions by stepping outside our fixed ways of thinking. This is the story of the Zen master, and the heavy stone, ***. In a small village nestled among steep mountains, the villagers faced a serious problem. The main road leading in and out of the village, their lifeline for trade and travel, was partially blocked by an enormous stone. The stone had fallen from the cliffs above during a landslide. It was massive, incredibly heavy, and half buried in the earth. None of the villagers could move it, despite their collective best efforts. The strongest men in the village gathered, put their shoulders to it, and pushed with all their might. The stone wouldn't budge. Others brought tools, hammers, chisels, picks, and tried to break it into smaller, movable pieces. But the stone was unusually hard granite, their tools merely made scratches. Some started digging around it, hoping to dislodge it and roll it away. But the ground was packed firm, and the stone was sunk deep. After days of failed attempts, frustration was growing. The blocked road was causing real hardship. Finally, they decided to seek help from the wise Zen master who lived in a monastery higher up the mountain. He was known for his creative, often unexpected, solutions to seemingly impossible problems. The master, an elderly man with a calm demeanor, agreed to come down and see the obstacle. A crowd gathered, watching with hopeful anticipation. They expected him to organize them better, to share some clever lever technique, or perhaps to use some profound spiritual power. The master slowly circled the massive boulder, examining it from all angles with great care, touching its surface. The villagers waited in hushed silence for his brilliant solution. Finally, the master stopped. He looked at the gathered crowd and asked a simple question. "Why," he said, "must the stone be moved?" The villagers were confused. "Wasn't it obvious?" One of them spoke up. Because it blocks the road, Master. It makes travel difficult and slow. Our carts can't pass properly. It's an obstacle. The Master nodded thoughtfully. The stone blocks one path, he said. But perhaps, it creates another. He then gestured away from the stone, to the side of the road where the land sloped gently. What if, he suggested, we clear and form a new path here? A path that goes around the stone. The villagers looked at each other. It was so simple. They had been so fixated on removing the obstacle that they hadn't considered simply going around it. With many hands making light work, they set to clearing the underbrush, leveling the ground, and creating a smooth, wide alternate route that curved gracefully around the boulder. Not only did this new path solve their immediate problem, but something beautiful happened. The massive stone, now a permanent feature beside the new road, became a beloved landmark. Children played on it. Elders sat in its shade to rest and talk. Travelers used it as a meeting point. Over time, the villagers came to appreciate, even cherish, the very obstacle they had once resented and fought against. Before returning to his monastery, the Zen master addressed them softly. Some obstacles, he said, cannot be removed through direct force. The wisdom lies not always in removal, but in finding a way to live with them, or to move around them. What appears to block your path, might actually be showing you a new direction. The Buddha taught, as the fletcher whittles and makes straight his arrows, so the master directs his straying thoughts. This teaching points to the importance of skillfully directing our minds, not forcing them down predetermined paths, but gently guiding them toward creative, flexible solutions. The villagers had been so mentally fixed on, remove the stone, that they couldn't see any alternative. Their thoughts were stuck in a single, rigid groove. Why do we so often get trapped in one way of viewing our problems? Zen Buddhism shines a light on several limiting mental patterns. First is our attachment to expectations. Our fixed, often unconscious, ideas about how a solution should look. The villagers were convinced the only proper solution was to move or break the stone, because that would restore the road to its original state. Their expectation of the solution limited their perception of possibilities. Second is what we might call fixed mind or rigid thinking. The inability to adapt our approach when faced with resistance. When our initial, most obvious efforts don't succeed, our habitual response is often to just try harder using the same method, rather than pausing to question the method itself. We push when we should step back. Third is our failure to question our fundamental assumptions. The villagers assumed the problem was the stone itself. The master reframed it, the problem was their need for a clear path. By shifting the focus from the stone to the need, he opened up a universe of new solutions that were invisible from within the original, narrow framework. Zen practice deliberately cultivates mental flexibility through the use of koans. These are paradoxical stories or questions. What is the sound of one hand clapping, that cannot be solved through conventional, linear, logical thinking? They are designed to short-circuit our habitual thought patterns, forcing the mind to operate in new, unexpected ways. This training develops what is called lateral thinking, the ability to approach problems from surprising angles, to see connections where none seemed obvious. The Buddha said, "We are shaped by our thoughts. We become what we think." When our thoughts remain trapped in familiar, rigid patterns, our solutions will be equally limited, and we will suffer accordingly. By cultivating mental flexibility, by questioning our assumptions, we open ourselves to innovative approaches that may have been hidden in plain sight all along. The Japanese concept of ma, the space between things, offers additional insight. Sometimes the solution lies not in the isolated elements themselves, the stone, the road, but in the relationship between them, in the empty space where new connections can be formed. The villagers found their answer not by focusing solely on the stone or the road, but by reconsidering the space around them, the possibility of a new relationship between the path and the obstacle. Tonight, as you rest, consider a challenge you've been facing, perhaps a relationship difficulty, a work problem, a personal habit you want to change. Have you been pushing against your heavy stone? Attempting the same solution over and over with minimal success? What might happen if, like the Zen master, you stepped back and asked a different question? Not, "How do I remove this?" but, "What new path might this obstacle be revealing, or, can I relate to this differently?" Remember the Buddha's encouraging teaching, no matter how hard the past, you can always begin again. Each moment, each breath, offers a fresh opportunity to see with new eyes, to drop our old stories, and to discover solutions that were waiting just beyond our usual, limited perspective. Let us now turn to a story about the power of letting go, about the freedom that comes when we stop carrying what no longer serves us. This is the story of the two traveling monks, ***. Two Buddhist monks, named Tanzan and Aikido, were once traveling together down a muddy road during the relentless rainy season. The road was flooded in places, a mess of thick mud and standing water, making their pilgrimage slow and arduous. As they rounded a bend, they came upon a lovely young woman standing at the edge of a particularly large, deep muddy puddle that completely blocked the path. She was dressed in an expensive silk kimono and sash, and she stood there hesitating, clearly distressed about how to proceed without ruining her beautiful garments. Without a word, Tanzan, the elder monk, walked over to the woman. He bowed slightly. Then, he simply picked her up in his arms, carried her carefully across the muddy water, and set her down safely on the other side. The woman thanked him with a gracious bow and continued on her way. The two monks also crossed the puddle. Then, they resumed their journey. They walked on in silence for several hours. But the younger monk, Aikido, grew more and more agitated as the miles passed. His face was clouded. Finally, unable to contain himself any longer, he burst out, "Brother Tanzan, we are monks. We have taken vows. We are not supposed to go near females, especially young and lovely ones. It is dangerous. It can lead to temptation. Why did you do that?" Tanzan looked at his companion, his face peaceful. He replied calmly, "I left the girl there by the river, brother. Are you still carrying her?" Aikido was stunned into silence. The truth landed like a lightning strike. While Tanzan had responded to a momentary human need with simple compassion and then returned fully to the present journey, he himself had been carrying the incident. Carrying it in his mind for hours. He had burdened himself with judgment, with rules, with mental commentary, with agitation. Not a physical woman, but the heavy weight of his own thoughts about the event. While Tanzan had put his burden down after a few minutes, Aikido had been needlessly carrying his for miles. The Buddha taught, let go of the past. Let go of the future. Let go of the present, and cross over to the farther shore of existence. This teaching perfectly captures Tanzan's embodied wisdom. He understood that true freedom comes not from rigid, fearful adherence to external rules, but from maintaining internal freedom. The ability to respond appropriately to each situation with compassion, and then to move on without clinging, without carrying residue. Why do we, like Aikido, so often carry unnecessary mental burdens long after the events that sparked them are over? Zen Buddhism helps us see the patterns. First is our powerful tendency toward rumination. The compulsive, repetitive thinking about past events we cannot change. This mental habit consumes vast amounts of energy that could be directed toward the present moment, and it often reinforces negative emotional states like anger, guilt, or anxiety. We chew on the past like old gum, long after the flavor is gone. Second is our attachment to rules over principles. Aikido was so focused on the letter of the monastic rule, do not touch women, that he completely missed its spirit, to cultivate purity of mind and intention, free from lust and attachment. Tanzan, by contrast, understood that compassion sometimes requires setting aside conventions, and that true purity lies in the absence of selfish desire in the moment of action, not in rigid, fear-based rule-following. Third is what Buddhists call papanka, mental proliferation or elaboration. One thought leads to another, and another, creating elaborate, often judgmental, internal narratives that exist only in our minds. Aikido's initial observation, he touched a woman, led to hours of internal drama. This is against the rules. What if someone saw? Is he a bad monk? What does this mean for my practice? Am I failing by association? Each thought was another brick in a wall of suffering he built himself. Zen practice trains us to recognize when we're carrying something that could be put down. Through meditation, we develop the capacity to observe our thoughts as they arise, without automatically being carried away by their current. We learn to distinguish between helpful reflection, learning from experience, and unhelpful rumination, dwelling in suffering. And we cultivate the ability, moment by moment, to return to the simplicity and freedom of what is actually happening right now. The Buddha said, in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. This teaching is an invitation to audit our mental luggage. What are we carrying that is no longer meant for us? Old resentments from past injuries? Anxiety about future uncertainties that may never come? Harsh judgments about ourselves or others? These are all burdens we can choose to set down. In Japanese Zen, the intense meditation retreat, session is sometimes described as an opportunity to literally touch the mind-heart and see what we've been unnecessarily carrying. The profound stillness allows these burdens to surface. And in that clear space, we can choose to let them go. This letting go isn't about forgetting or denying our experiences. It's about preventing them from becoming permanent obstacles to living fully, freely, in the present. In your daily life, notice when you're carrying something long after the actual event has ended. Perhaps replaying a conversation, worrying about a mistake, or nurturing a grievance. Can you, like Tanzan, learn to respond appropriately to what each moment requires? And then return to the present without dragging the past behind you like a heavy chain. The Buddha taught, happiness never decreases by being shared. Similarly, our peace of mind never decreases by letting go of what no longer needs to be carried. It only increases. Tonight, as you prepare for deep rest, experiment with setting down whatever mental burdens you've been carrying from the day. Imagine placing each concern, each unresolved situation, each judgment or worry, gently on the ground beside your bed. They will still be there in the morning if you truly need to pick them up again. But for now, feel the lightness. Feel the spaciousness that comes from traveling unburdened, even if just for the night. Remember Tanzan's simple, profound wisdom: true freedom lies not in avoiding life's muddy waters, but in crossing them when necessary with compassion. And then continuing on your way with an uncluttered, light heart. Let us explore a story about the power of inner silence, about hearing the wisdom that speaks in whispers. This is the story of the cricket, in the temple, ****. In a bustling, modern Japanese city, there stood an ancient, magnificent temple. For centuries, its curved golden roof had gleamed under the sun and moon. Now, it was surrounded by the relentless noise of modern life. Traffic, construction, crowds of tourists, the electronic hum of the city. Yet, within its walls, a sense of profound, palpable peace prevailed. It was as if the temple created a bubble of silence amidst the chaos. One day, a young musician visited. He had studied both Western classical music and meditation, and he was particularly curious about the quality of silence he felt the moment he stepped inside. It wasn't just an absence of sound, it felt like a presence. He found a quiet corner in the main hall, sat down, closed his eyes, and focused on his hearing, trying to understand the secret of this silence. To his surprise, as he attuned his ears, beneath the occasional distant cough or shuffle of a visitor, he detected a subtle, rhythmic sound. Chirp, chirp, chirp. It was so faint it was almost imperceptible, woven into the very fabric of the quiet. Intrigued, he followed the sound with his attention. It led him to one of the massive, ancient wooden pillars that supported the temple roof. And there, in a small crack in the centuries-old wood, lived a tiny cricket. It was singing its heart out. The musician was amazed. How could such a tiny creature possibly be heard in this vast space, with all the noise of the city just outside? He approached an elderly monk who was slowly, mindfully sweeping the temple floor. "Venerable one," he asked softly, "have you noticed? There's a cricket living in that pillar." The old monk stopped sweeping and smiled, his eyes crinkling. "Ah," he said. "You've heard our little friend. Yes, he has lived in this temple for many years. A faithful resident." "But how?" pressed the musician, his curiosity aflame. "How is it possible that such a tiny, quiet sound can be heard in this large hall, with all the noise from the city outside. The monk put down his broom. He gestured for the young man to follow him to the temple's main entrance, which stood open to the bustling street. Reaching into the sleeve of his robe, the monk pulled out a single, small coin. "Watch," he said simply. He dropped the coin onto the stone floor. Clink, the sound was sharp, metallic. At that single, small noise, nearly every visitor in the crowded temple turned their heads to look, their attention instantly captured. The monk turned to the puzzled musician. "People hear," he said gently, "what they are listening for. The coin is no louder than the cricket. But everyone notices it. Because money speaks a language that all are trained to hear, to value, to pursue. The cricket sings its song day and night. But few notice. Because they are not listening for such voices. Their inner world is too noisy, too filled with the clamor of desire and worry, to hear it." He continued, his voice a soft murmur in the grand space. "Those who quiet their inner noise, can hear what others miss. Not just crickets, but the whispers of wisdom that speak constantly beneath the surface of things. True silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of attention. A quiet mind becomes a vast temple where even the smallest truth can be heard clearly." The young musician bowed deeply, understanding that he had received a teaching far more valuable than any musical technique. He had been shown the crucial difference between hearing and listening. Between external quiet and true, receptive inner silence. The Buddha taught, "He who is patient is the greatest warrior." This teaching relates profoundly to our capacity for cultivating inner silence. The greatest battles are often not against external enemies, but against our own internal noise. The constant chatter of thoughts, judgments, plans, memories, fears, and desires that drown out the subtle, guiding wisdom available in each moment. Why do we struggle to hear the crickets in our own lives? Zen Buddhism points to the factors that create our inner cacophony. First is our conditioning to value certain inputs over others. Just as everyone noticed the falling coin but few heard the cricket, we are culturally trained to pay attention to the dramatic, the urgent, the flashy, the lucrative. We overlook the subtle, the quiet, the slow, the seemingly insignificant, which is often where deeper truth and beauty reside. Second is what Zen aptly calls monkey mind, the restless, agitated, jumping quality of our ordinary consciousness. It swings from thought branch to thought branch, rarely settling in one place long enough to perceive what lies beneath the surface of appearances. This internal noise creates a thick veil between us and direct experience, filtering reality through layers of concept and commentary. Third is our diminished capacity for wonder and pure presence. Children naturally notice crickets, ants, cloud shapes, and dandelions because they haven't yet learned to dismiss the insignificant. As adults, burdened with responsibilities and preoccupations, we often lose this capacity for direct, unfiltered perception. We miss the extraordinary that is always hiding within the ordinary. Zen practice is, in large part, the cultivation of active silence. Not the absence of thought, but a quality of alert, open receptivity that allows us to perceive beyond our habitual noise. Through meditation, we train ourselves to notice when we're caught in internal monologue, and we gently, patiently, return to simple presence. This isn't about suppressing thoughts, it's about developing the capacity to hear what exists beneath and between them. The Buddha said, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought." The mind is everything. What we think we become. When our minds are filled with constant noise, we become noisy ourselves. Distracted, fragmented, anxious, unable to access the deeper, quieter wisdom that is our true nature. When we cultivate inner silence, we become clear, steady, and able to hear the subtle guidance of our own intuition and of life itself. In Japanese aesthetics, the concept of ma reappears, the meaningful pause, the empty space that gives form to the whole. In music, it's the silence between notes that creates rhythm and meaning. In conversation, it's the attentive pause that allows for deeper understanding to arise. In life, it's the quiet moments of receptivity that often contain our most profound insights and intuitions. The cricket in a temple represents all the subtle voices we typically ignore, our intuitions, our bodily sensations, the quiet nudges of conscience, the gentle beauty of a moment, the natural rhythms we override. When we cultivate inner silence, these voices become audible. They offer guidance, solace, and connection that are completely unavailable to the noisy, busy mind. Tonight, as you rest in the quiet of this moment, can you listen beyond your thoughts? Can you tune your inner ear to the crickets in your own awareness? Perhaps you'll notice the rhythm of your breathing, a sensation of warmth or coolness in your body, a feeling of peace that has been waiting beneath the day's worries, or an intuitive knowing about something in your life. You don't need to do anything with it. Just listen. Just hear it. As the Buddha taught, the quieter you become, the more you can hear. In cultivating this inner silence, we make an astonishing discovery: the wisdom, the peace, the answers we seek, have been speaking to us all along, in a gentle whisper. We simply haven't been still enough to hear them. As we near the completion of our journey through these ancient stories, let us explore one that speaks directly to the essence of practice, finding peace not in achieving a special state, but in complete presence with what is. This is the story of the Zen master, and the strawberries, ****. A Zen student came to his master with a troubled heart. "Master," he said, frustration evident in his voice, "I have been studying and practicing Zen for 3 years now. I sit in meditation daily. I try to be mindful. But my mind is still so restless. When I sit, thoughts flood in uncontrollably. When I try to be present during the day, I find myself constantly distracted, worried about the future, regretting the past. How can I ever find the peace you speak of? It feels impossible." The master listened with deep attention, hearing not just the words, but the ache behind them. Then he said, "Come with me. I wish to show you something." He led the student out of the monastery gates and down a narrow, winding mountain path. They walked in silence for nearly an hour, until they came to a high cliff that overlooked a breathtaking, vast valley. Far below, a silver river wound through emerald forests and golden meadows. The afternoon sun bathed everything in a luminous, peaceful light. The master gestured for the student to sit near the edge of the cliff. When they were both seated comfortably on the sun-warmed rock, the master did something unexpected. He reached into the simple fold of his robe and pulled out 2 perfectly ripe, red strawberries. He placed one before the student, and one before himself. "Eat," said the master, and he picked up his own strawberry. The student, though confused by this seemingly trivial instruction in the face of his profound spiritual crisis, obeyed. He picked up the strawberry and bit into it. The flavor was extraordinary. It burst in his mouth, sweet, yet with a hint of tartness, fragrant, incredibly alive. He had eaten strawberries many times before, but somehow, this one was different. It was as if he were tasting a strawberry for the very first time. As they ate in silence, the master observed the student's face, watching the frustration melt into an expression of surprised, pure delight. When they had finished, the master spoke. "Tell me," he said, "while you were eating the strawberry, where was your mind?" The student reflected for a moment. And he realized, "It was here," he said. It was completely on the strawberry. On the taste, the texture, the smell. It was only here. And during those moments, the master continued, "Were you troubled by thoughts of the past? Were you anxious about the future? Were you distracted by your worries or regrets?" "No," the student said, and as he said it, understanding began to dawn like the sun in his mind. There was only the strawberry. Nothing else. The master smiled, a smile that held the warmth of the cliffside sun. "This," he said gently, "is the peace you seek. It is not found by eliminating thoughts, by achieving some special, blank state of mind. It is found in complete presence with whatever is right in front of you. Whether it's a strawberry, a breath, a simple task, a difficult emotion, or the sound of the wind. When you are fully present, past and future cannot touch you. They exist only in thought. And when thought dissolves into pure experience, peace naturally emerges. It is not something you create. It is what is left when you stop interfering." "But master," the student protested, "the strawberry was easy to be present with. It was pleasant, delightful. What about when I face something difficult or painful? A sharp pain, a bitter disappointment, a deep fear?" "An excellent question," the master nodded. "The practice is the same, though it is indeed more challenging. Whether facing a strawberry or a snake, joy or sorrow, praise or blame, presence is always available. The nature of what you face changes. But the quality of awareness you bring to it need not change. This is the great freedom of Zen practice. You are not at the mercy of your experiences. You are the space in which they arise." The student bowed deeply, gratitude washing through him. From that day forward, he approached his practice differently. He stopped struggling to eliminate thoughts or achieve a peaceful state. Instead, he focused on bringing simple, complete presence to each moment as it came, to each activity, each breath, each step. And he found, to his constant surprise, that the peace he had been seeking so desperately had been available all along. In the taste of a strawberry. In the feeling of his feet on the ground. In the sound of rain. The Buddha taught, do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. This teaching is the direct, uncomplicated path to peace. Not through escaping our current experience, but through fully inhabiting it. The strawberry represents any ordinary moment that, when met with complete, undivided presence, reveals itself to be extraordinary, complete, and peaceful. Why is staying present so persistently difficult? Zen helps us see the patterns that pull us away. First is our habitual time traveling. The mind's constant, automatic swinging between past and future, reviewing what has happened, rehearsing what might occur. This mental movement is so constant we often don't even notice it, yet it continuously removes us from the direct experience of now. Second is our automatic evaluation system. The mind's instant sorting of every experience into categories, pleasant/unpleasant, desirable/undesirable, important/unimportant. This constant judging creates a subtle but powerful resistance to what is actually happening. We mentally reach for what we prefer and push away what we don't, creating inner conflict with reality itself. Third is our search for special experiences. The belief that peace or happiness must come in a particular, dramatic package, a blissful meditation, a perfect vacation, a spiritual awakening, that is different from our ordinary life. This misunderstanding causes us to overlook the profound beauty, wholeness, and peace available in simple, everyday moments like tasting a strawberry, feeling the sun, or listening to the rain. The Japanese concept of ichigo ichii, one time, one meeting, captures the precious, unrepeatable nature of each moment. It reminds us that this particular breath, this particular sensation, this particular encounter, will never occur exactly the same way again. When we truly understand this, presence becomes not just a practice, but a natural response. We naturally want to show up completely for the unique, fleeting gift of now. Zen practice trains this capacity through both formal meditation, *zazen*, and mindful daily activities, *samu*. In zazen, we repeatedly notice when the mind has wandered into past or future, and we gently, without judgment, return to the simple anchor of the breath and the body. In daily life, we practice bringing that same quality of gentle return to walking, eating, working, listening. The Buddha said, "The secret of health for both mind and body is not to mourn for the past, worry about the future, or anticipate troubles, but to live in the present moment wisely and earnestly." This wisdom reminds us that presence is not merely a spiritual exercise. It is the very foundation of well-being in all dimensions of our life, physical, mental, and emotional. Tonight, as you rest here, can you bring the quality of strawberry-eating presence to the experience of preparing for sleep? Can you feel the weight and texture of your body against the bed? The gentle rhythm of your breathing? The gradual, subtle relaxation of your muscles? The quiet darkness behind your eyelids? Can you let go of trying to sleep, and simply be with the sensations of resting? As the Buddha taught, wherever you are, be there totally. In this complete, gentle presence with what is, lies the peace that has been waiting for you all along. It is not ahead of you. It is not behind you. It is here. In this breath. In this sensation of rest. Welcome it. And now, As our journey through these 10 gates of wisdom draws to a gentle close, let us rest with one final story. A story that brings us full circle, back to the very heart of the matter. This is the story of the sacred mountain ***. In ancient China, a young scholar named Li had devoted his life to the study of spiritual texts from every tradition he could find. He had read countless sutras, memorized sacred verses, and debated with the most learned masters. His knowledge was vast. Yet, despite this immense intellectual understanding, he felt an emptiness, a nagging sense that something essential was missing. He had knowledge about the truth, but he lacked a direct experience of it. Having heard that a truly great Zen master lived as a hermit on a remote, sacred mountain, Li decided to undertake the difficult journey. He needed to meet a living master, not just read his words. After many days of arduous travel through dense forests and up treacherous slopes, he finally reached the simple, weather-beaten hut where the master lived. The old master welcomed him with a quiet warmth, invited him in, and offered him rest from his journey. After they had shared a simple meal of rice and wild herbs, Li, his heart full of yearning, explained his purpose. "Master," he said, "I have studied the spiritual teachings of the world extensively. I know the doctrines, the philosophies, the arguments. But I feel I am missing the very essence. The living heart of it all. I have come to ask you, what is the ultimate truth? What is the final goal of all this seeking? What is enlightenment?" The master looked at him with kind, clear eyes that seemed to see right through to his restless soul. He said, "Before I answer, would you like some tea?" Li nodded, slightly impatient but respectful. The master rose and began the slow, mindful process of preparing tea. While the water heated over the small fire, the master asked a seemingly simple question. "Tell me, what did you notice as you climbed the mountain to reach this place?" Li thought for a moment. "Well, the path was very steep. Difficult. There were many loose rocks and tangled roots that made the climbing hazardous. Sometimes I had to stop just to catch my breath. It was a struggle. And did you notice anything else?" The master inquired gently. Li paused, reaching back into his memory of the climb. There were beautiful, ancient pine trees. Their scent was wonderful. And there were patches of wildflowers in the clearings, colors so bright they seemed unreal. At one point, I crossed a stream. The water was so clear I could see every stone on the bottom. And, occasionally, there were gaps in the trees that revealed breathtaking views of the valleys below, layered in mist. It was magnificent. "I see," said the master, pouring the steaming tea into 2 simple cups. He handed one to Li. "And now that you are here, at the end of your seeking, what do you expect to find?" Li hesitated, sipping the hot, bitter tea. "I'm not sure exactly. Some profound teaching, I suppose. Some experience, some final piece of knowledge that will make everything clear. The ultimate truth that all the texts point toward but never quite reveal." The master didn't respond immediately. He simply drank his tea, looking out from the entrance of the hut at the magnificent landscape before them. The mountains stood silent and eternal. Clouds drifted like slow thoughts across the vast sky. Birds circled on invisible currents. The silence was deep, rich, full. After a long time sitting in this shared, wordless presence, the Master spoke, his voice soft as the mountain air. The ultimate truth you seek was present in every step of your journey. In the effort of your climbing, in the beauty you observed, in the challenges you faced, in the clarity of the stream water, in the scent of the pines. It is here now, in this cup of tea. In the mountains before us. In the space of awareness, in which all of these experiences arise and pass away. He continued, looking now at Lee, there is nothing to attain, beyond what is already present. Enlightenment is not some special, distant state separate from your ordinary experience. It is seeing the extraordinary within the ordinary. It is recognizing the sacred nature of this moment, exactly as it is. The Master gestured to the panoramic view. This mountain you call sacred is no more sacred than the ground where your own home stands. These trees are no more special than those growing in your village. This moment is no different in its essential nature from every other moment of your life. The sacred is not a place. It is a way of seeing. Lee looked confused, a little disappointed. Then, why did I need to make this difficult journey? Why do we study? Why do we practice? Why do we seek it all? The Master smiled, a smile that held infinite compassion. The journey was necessary, not because the truth was hidden on this mountain, but because you believed it was. Sometimes, we must exhaust our seeking. We must climb all the mountains of our longing. Before we can finally stop, turn around, and recognize that what we have been seeking has never been absent. The spiritual path is not about finding what is missing. It is about seeing what is already here. As they continued to sit in the quiet, breathtaking beauty of the mountain evening, Lee felt something within him shift, soften, and settle. The intellectual tension, the desperate seeking, began to melt away. He began to understand. The truth he had been seeking in esoteric teachings and special experiences was right here. In the direct, unfiltered encounter with life itself. Just as it is. In all its ordinary, and therefore miraculous, marvel. The Buddha taught, if we could see the miracle of a single flower clearly, our whole life would change. This teaching points to the radical, immediate shift in perception that is always available. It occurs when we stop overlooking the ordinary in our search for the extraordinary, and instead, recognize the profound, sacred nature of what is already present. Lee's arduous journey up the sacred mountain represents a universal human pattern, the belief that truth, peace, fulfillment is elsewhere. That it requires special circumstances, special teachers, special experiences to access. We believe peace is for tomorrow, when our work is done. We believe wisdom is in the next book, the next retreat. We believe happiness is around the next corner, when we finally get what we want. Why do we cling to this belief? Zen helps us see why. First is our tendency toward idealization. We create perfect, mental images of enlightenment, peace, the good life. We then compare our present, messy, real experience unfavorably to these idealized mental pictures. This comparison is a guaranteed recipe for dissatisfaction, for feeling that now is not enough. Second is what some call spiritual bypassing, using spiritual ideas and practices to avoid direct, honest engagement with the challenging, gritty, imperfect aspects of our ordinary human life. By placing truth on a distant mountain, we create a convenient excuse for not finding it, and not dealing with it, in our everyday circumstances. Third is our culturally ingrained habit of postponement. The belief that fulfillment is always in the future, after we achieve a goal, acquire a possession, change a circumstance. This habit of mind constantly pulls us out of the present, the only place where life is actually lived, and where fulfillment can actually be felt. The Japanese practice of shikantaza, just sitting, is the ultimate embodiment of the master's teaching. It is sitting without any goal, without seeking any special state or experience. It is a radical, courageous affirmation that this moment, exactly as it is, with its thoughts, its sensations, its boredom, its peace, contains everything needed for awakening. Nothing to add. Nothing to remove. Zen Master Dogen wrote, "If you cannot find the truth right where you are, where else do you expect to find it?" This is the gentle, firm challenge to our most basic assumption. Likely, we exhaust ourselves seeking elsewhere, what has never, for a single moment, been absent from our awareness. The Buddha said, "It is in the nature of things that joy arises in a person free from remorse." This points to the natural emergence of well-being when we stop creating a division between where we are and where we think we should be. The cessation of frantic seeking doesn't leave an emptiness. It reveals the fullness that our seeking had been obscuring all along. Tonight, as we complete our journey together through these 10 gates of wisdom, can you recognize this in your own experience? The peace you have been gently moving toward through listening, is not separate from your present awareness. It is your present awareness, when it is not cluttered with seeking. The wisdom in these ancient stories, is not a distant philosophy. It is immediately, directly available in your own capacity to be present, to let go, to accept, to appreciate, to be compassionate, starting right now. As the Buddha said, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. The ultimate truth is not hidden on a sacred mountain or locked in ancient texts. It is in the miracle of your own ordinary awareness. The silent, peaceful witness that has been present throughout our entire journey together, listening to these words, feeling the sensations in your body, aware of the space around you. That is the sacred temple. You have been home the whole time. As we draw our time together to a peaceful close, let us rest in a final, gentle reflection on the journey we have shared. We began with the empty boat, learning to see when we fill situations with stories of intention, and finding freedom when we recognize their emptiness. We faced the monk and the tiger, discovering that joy is always available in the present moment, symbolized by a single strawberry, even amidst life's dangers. We understood the two arrows, realizing the profound difference between inevitable pain and optional suffering, and learning to not shoot the second arrow at ourselves. We walked with Kisa Gautami and the mustard seed, learning the universal, shared nature of loss and the peace that comes from accepting impermanence. We observed the farmer and the horse, cultivating the wise, maybe, mind that suspends judgment in the face of life's constant, unpredictable changes. We stood with the Buddha and the angry man, discovering that we have a choice whether to accept the gifts of others' negativity, and that true strength is in non-reactivity. We held the monk's teacup, learning to appreciate all things deeply precisely because they are already broken, already impermanent. We witnessed the Buddha and the robe, understanding that true generosity is wise and compassionate, directed toward genuine need. We crossed the river with the two monks, remembering not to carry mental and emotional burdens long after the event has passed. We listened for the cricket in the temple, cultivating the inner silence that allows us to hear the subtle whispers of wisdom. We tasted the Zen master's strawberry, discovering that peace is found in complete, undivided presence with whatever is here, right now. We chose the right boat for our journey, understanding that spiritual paths are vehicles, not destinations, and we must choose what serves our unique crossing. We pondered the sound of one hand, moving from conceptual answers to direct, wordless experience. We encountered the heavy stone, learning to find creative solutions by questioning our assumptions and building new paths around obstacles. We presented our full cup, learning the necessity of beginner's mind, of emptying our preconceptions to make room for genuine understanding. We met the samurai at the gate, seeing how heaven and hell are states we create in our own minds through our reactions and choices. We appreciated Ryoan's moon, discovering that the greatest treasures, like the moon's beauty, are freely available, needing no acquisition, only a receptive heart. We climbed the sacred mountain, and finally realized that what we seek through all our striving, has never been elsewhere. It is here, in the ordinary marvel of this present awareness. The Buddha taught, these three things cannot remain hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. As you now drift gently toward sleep, may the truths illuminated in these ancient stories remain with you. Not as concepts to remember, but as a gentle feeling. A feeling of lightness, of spaciousness, of permission to let go, of the peace that comes from simply being here, now, without struggle. Thank you for sharing this journey, from Monk's Temple. May you rest deeply, peacefully. May you wake refreshed, renewed, and carrying the quiet wisdom of these tales into the light of a new day. Let your breath be soft. Let your body be heavy. Let your mind be at ease. All is well. Good night.